Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this what if story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by HarshaJirou on Wattpad. Now let's start. In the hospital, a newborn child suddenly stopped breathing, and the doctors lost hope of saving him. At that moment, a fox spirit named Winter observed the situation, searching for a vessel to bestow its powers. Feeling pity for the baby on the brink of death, Winter decided to intervene. As the spirit entered the child's body, the boy began to breathe again. The doctors were astonished to see him alive, and his mother, 𝗵𝗄𝗵𝗃, was relieved to learn about the miracle that had saved her son. In this world, the male-to-female population ratio was 20% to 80%, making males quite rare, especially since only 16% of that 20% were adults. In a society filled with superheroes, quirks were used to protect people from those who misused their powers. The government allowed boys to have charms, though it was not compulsory. 4 years later, 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗃, the boy who had survived the miracle, was wandering the streets. He was grappling with the recent loss of his father, 𝗧𝗧, and the tragic passing of his mother, 𝗕𝗄, who succumbed to despair. A pro-hero named endevour was patrolling the streets, pondering what his daughter Shoko's quirk might be when he unexpectedly bumped into a child with green hair, fox ears, and 9 tails. Izuku had discovered that he possessed a fox spirit within him, granting him enhanced physical abilities and the power to control blue flames, known as the strongest fire, along with lightning. The child fell onto his tails and looked up at the pro-hero, bowing and apologizing for not paying attention. Endeavour, surprised by the sight of the fox ears and tails, asked the boy what he was doing in an alleyway and where his guardians were. Izuku's expression turned sad, and tears began to roll down his cheeks. Endeavour felt a wave of concern, worried that he had frightened the child. After a moment of silence, Izuku shared that his father had died in an attack a year ago and that his mother had taken her own life due to the stress of raising him alone. Endeavour was taken aback, feeling deep sympathy for the young boy. He thought about how much Izuku was suffering at such a young age, yet he was articulate and composed. Endeavour then asked for the child's name and quirk. Izuku stood up, wiped his tears, and introduced himself, explaining that his quirk was called Kitsune, which allowed him to control blue fire and lightning while enhancing his physical abilities. Endeavour was impressed, recognizing the potential in Izuku's powerful quirk. He believed that with proper training, the boy could become strong, especially with the blue fire reminiscent of his own son, 𝗬𝗂𝗧𝗏. After a moment of contemplation, Endeavour offered to adopt Izuku, promising to train him alongside his other children to become a hero. Izuku's eyes sparkled with excitement, as it had always been his dream to be a hero, and the man before him was known as the number 2 hero after All Might. After considering the offer, Izuku accepted, eager to train under such a respected figure. Endeavour was delighted that this well-mannered, strong, and intelligent child had accepted his offer, as his family had been encouraging him to adopt a new member. He gently patted Izuku's head and scratched his ears, eliciting a small, delightful sound from the boy that brought a smile to Endeavour's face. He lifted Izuku onto his shoulders and flew to the nearest hospital to conduct health tests and finalize the adoption paperwork. After the tests, Endeavour asked Izuku if he wanted to keep his family name or change it. Izuku expressed his longing to keep his name, wanting to make his family proud. Endeavour smiled at his response and agreed. Once the adoption papers were signed, he took Izuku home to introduce him to his family. Upon arriving, Endeavour instructed Izuku to hide behind him and peek out when he called his family to the door, announcing that he had a surprise. Izuku complied, managing to conceal himself well, even with his small tails hidden from view. Endeavour knocked on the door 3 times, and after a brief wait, his wife, with pure white hair, opened the door and welcomed him home. After hugging her, Endeavour requested that she call their children to the entrance, as he had something to share. Though confused, his wife called for their children to come to the door. Izuku winced at the loud voice but remained hidden. After a moment, 4 children appeared. The oldest, with red hair, looked about 8 years old, The second boy, with pure white hair like their mother, appeared to be 7. The third, a girl with white hair and a few red stripes, looked 5, and the youngest girl, who was about Izuku's height and lacked ears, had half red and half white hair and different colored eyes, appearing somewhat emotionless. They gathered in front of their father, smiling. The oldest sibling asked what he had called them for. Endeavour smiled and announced that he had a surprise for them. The siblings buzzed with excitement, each expressing their anticipation for the surprise. As the excitement settled, Izuku stepped out from behind Endeavor's leg, ready to meet his new family. The siblings were surprised, and their mother was equally astonished to see such a cute child with fox ears and 9 small tails. They all thought to themselves how adorable he was, but wondered who he could be. Their mother quickly recovered from her shock and asked who the cute fox child was. Izuku blushed slightly at being called cute, bowed a bit, and introduced himself as 𝗧𝗍𝗵𝗲 𝗔𝗂𝗁, a 4-year-old who had just been adopted by their father, Enji Todoroki, an hour ago. The family was taken aback by his polite and mature manner of speaking. After a moment of processing the information, they squealed in excitement, with the third oldest among them asking if it was true that they were getting such a cute and polite kid as their stepbrother. Endeavour smiled and confirmed that it was indeed true. They hugged their father, while Shoko approached Izuku and asked if she could touch his ears, remarking on how soft they looked. The rest of the family was surprised by the request from the usually stoic girl. Izuku smiled and said it was fine, as it felt good to be patted. She smiled back and gently reached out to touch his ears. From Shoko's perspective, when she touched his ears, they were so soft that she couldn't help but continue. She decided to softly scratch behind his ears, and he let out an incredibly cute sound that surprised her. Turning around, she saw her family's reaction. Her mother, sister, and second eldest brother were squealing in delight, while her father and eldest brother simply laughed at their enthusiasm. After a moment, she introduced herself, explaining that she was Shoko Todoroki and that her quirk was half hot and half cold, allowing her to wield fire from her left side and ice from her right. She expressed her happiness at having a new member in their family. Following her introduction, the other family members came forward to introduce themselves to their new stepbrother. After the introductions, Fuyumi asked Izuku what his quirk was, considering his fox-like appearance. Izuku smiled brightly and explained that his quirk was called Kitsune, which allowed him to control blue fire and lightning, enhancing his physical abilities by channeling electricity throughout his body. Shoko was amazed by his powerful quirk, and she noticed that her sister's cheeks turned a light shade of pink for some reason. Curious, Shoko asked their mother why Fuyumi's cheeks had turned pink after Izuku introduced himself. Their mother smirked slightly and said that Shoko would understand when she was a bit older. Though confused, Shoko accepted her mother's answer and decided not to dwell on it. From Izuku's perspective, after sharing his quirk, 𝗬𝗓 took his hand and showed him around the house. Izuku was amazed by how large it was. After the tour, they were called down for dinner by their new mother. They were served soba and katsudon, according to Shoko's and 𝗬𝗓's preferences. The katsudon was incredibly tasty, and Izuku thought it was just as delicious, if not more so, than his biological mother's katsudon. The thought of his mother brought a moment of sadness, which did not go unnoticed by his new mother, who asked if something was wrong and if the food was not to his liking. He quickly reassured her that the food was delicious but that he had been reminded of his real mother's cooking. Immediately, she got up from her seat, came over, and hugged him, expressing sympathy for the hardships he had faced at such a young age. She promised him that he would not be treated any less than her own children and that he could trust them. Overwhelmed with emotion, Izuku began to cry on her shoulder while his new siblings embraced him as well. He silently thanked the universe for providing him with such a kind new family and vowed to protect them no matter what. Time passed, and 8 years later, Izuku was now 12 years old and in his first year of middle school, attending a different school from his siblings because he wanted to grow strong on his own. During these years, he had grown incredibly close to his family, training extensively with his father, Enji, while also practicing privately without their notice. He had learned to use his blue flames to levitate and launch attacks. He developed a technique he called lightning mode, where he could circulate electricity through his body to enhance his speed, power, senses, and instincts. In this mode, his fire attacks merged with electricity to create even stronger effects. Over time, he had grown to be 5 feet 3 inches tall, which was quite tall for a 12-year-old, and he had formed especially close bonds with his sisters, Shoko and Fuyumi. He also has a crush on them but doesn't show it when he is near them, even though the family, apart from his sisters and himself, knows about their mutual feelings. His brothers tease him a lot because of these crushes. Sometimes, Fuyumi openly shows her affection through hugs, cuddles, and kisses on the cheek. Meanwhile, Shoko cuddles with him every night on the same bed, despite them having different rooms. Fuyumi and Shoko are in the same middle school and grade, while Izuku chose a different middle school. Izuku felt a rush of excitement on his first day of middle school. His big brother, Tuya, had made it into UA and was in his second year, proudly choosing the hero name 𝗕𝗵𝗆, which Izuku thought was really cool. His other big brother, Natsuo, had decided to become a doctor, a dream he had always pursued. Their father had maintained his status as the number 2 hero for many years. As Izuku reached the school gates, he took a good look at the premises, marveling at how big the school was. He hoped there would be a music club he could join. He observed students around him making friends, getting familiar with the school, and forming groups, while seniors recruited members for their clubs. Not wanting to join one on his first day, he made his way to class. After a brief moment, he entered his classroom and noticed he still had 30 minutes before homeroom began. Looking around, he saw 2 girls who appeared to be very good friends. One of them had extended earlobes with a pin, which he assumed was related to her quirk. She had short purple hair and striking black onyx eyes, looking both cute and confident. The other girl was almost as tall as him, with pitch black hair styled in a spiky ponytail, exuding grace that suggested she came from a wealthy family. She also had gray onyx eyes. Izuku thought it was interesting how people with onyx eyes seemed to connect. As he approached them to introduce himself, the classroom door suddenly opened, and their teacher entered. Confused about the early arrival, Izuku walked over to the teacher and introduced himself, asking why he had come in so early. The teacher smiled and explained that he was Terigawa Kimura, and he wanted to get to know some students who arrived early. Izuku nodded and returned to his seat, noticing that the 2 girls were seated nearby. As more students trickled in and settled into their chosen seats, their homeroom teacher introduced himself to the class and invited everyone to introduce themselves one by one. Izuku learned that the 2 girls were Momo Yaoyorozu and Kyokaja. After everyone had introduced themselves, their teacher shared information about the school, its rules and regulations. They were then given the opportunity to explore the school until lunch. Izuku roamed around, familiarizing himself with the place, and was delighted when he spotted the music club. Eager to see the instruments, he went inside and was amazed by the variety available. When he saw a ukulele, he remembered a song he had written for Fuyumi and Shoko. Noticing that no one was around, he decided to play for a while, grabbing the ukulele and starting to strum. After finishing the song, he heard applause and turned around to see Kyokajiru and Momo Yaoyorozu clapping for him. He felt his cheeks heat up, realizing they had heard the song he wrote. Jiru approached him, sparkling with enthusiasm, and complimented his voice and ukulele skills. Flustered, Izuku blushed at her close proximity. She seemed to realize and stepped back slightly, her own cheeks tinted with color. Momo also praised his talent, and Izuku thanked them for their kind words, explaining that he thought he was alone and wanted to play a song he had written while scratching his chin. Yaoyorozu mentioned that she and a friend wanted to check out the music club. While they were nearby, they heard an amazing voice, and she encouraged her friend to come closer to listen. After introducing themselves, they headed to the garden and sat on a nearby bench, enjoying each other's company, sharing jokes, and laughing. Suddenly, 𝗓𝗏 turned to the protagonist and expressed her curiosity about his ears, saying they looked incredibly fluffy. Yaoyorozu chimed in, expressing her interest in his tails, which were quite large and fluffy. Both girls gazed at him with eager eyes, prompting him to smile and agree that 𝗓𝗏 could feel his ears first, followed by Yaoyorozu feeling his tail, but not simultaneously since they were sensitive. 𝗓𝗏 leaned in closer and began to gently touch his ears, which felt delightful to him, causing him to emit a soft, pleased sound. 𝗓𝗪 found his ears to be incredibly soft, and the noise he made was adorable, making her want to hug him right then and there. After a minute, satisfied with her turn, she returned to her spot on the bench, and Yaoyorozu approached him next. She was thrilled to see how happy he looked and quickly reached for one of his long, fluffy tails, eliciting another cute noise from him. After a moment, 𝗓𝗪 joined in, taking hold of one of his other tails. His remaining tails wagged enthusiastically, indicating his joy, and they both chuckled at the expression on his face. As they were about to return to their seats, they felt several of his tails wrap around them, creating a soft, fluffy embrace. They were gently pulled back down to sit near him. Curious, Yaoyorozu asked why he had wrapped his tails around them. He pouted adorably, which made both girls smile. Once they calmed down, he requested that they brush his tails with a brush. The irresistible look in his eyes made it impossible for them to refuse. They fashioned 2 soft brushes, handing one to 𝗓𝗪, who accepted it eagerly. They began brushing his tails, and he smiled widely, making soft, happy sounds that were music to their ears. After a few minutes of brushing, he stood up, bowed slightly, and thanked them for indulging his request. 𝗓𝗪 responded that it was no problem. They enjoyed it just as much as he did. Feeling a blush creep onto his cheeks, the protagonist asked her why she called him Foxy. She smirked and explained that it was her nickname for him, inviting him to call her Kyoka. He blushed even more and agreed. Yaoyorozu then decided to give him a nickname as well, choosing Foxy, too, and asked him to call her Momo since her family name was quite long. He smiled and complied, and just then, the lunch bell rang. They made their way to the cafeteria, opened their lunchboxes, and enjoyed their meal while chatting. After lunch, they attended their remaining classes. When the last bell rang, they packed their bags and headed toward the exit. At the door, he turned to them and mentioned that he would be taking the bus home, while Momo and Kyoka would be driving to Momo's house since Kyoka's parents were on vacation. After saying goodbye, he walked to the bus stop and headed home. 2 months later, he reflected on how much closer they had become during that time. They spent most of their time together, sharing hugs and friendly gestures. Momo received many love confessions from both boys and girls but turned them all down. 𝗓𝗪 was also quite popular at school, and he had received a few confessions himself, which he declined. His home was just a 10-minute walk from the school, while Momo and 𝗓𝗪 lived farther away but had private transport, so he didn't worry about them. In the past 5 days, he noticed a few senior boys following them for a while before disappearing. Although he felt suspicious, he trusted Momo's strength and Kyoka's fighting skills. One evening, he returned home earlier than usual and decided to pass the time in the city center. It was dark outside, and he was walking home through a shortcut in a dim alley when he heard a voice that sounded like Momo's crying. Alarmed, he rushed toward the sound and peeked around a corner, discovering the 5 boys who had been stalking them were about to harass Momo and Kyoka. Anger surged within him, but knowing that quirk usage was prohibited, he quickly set his phone against the wall to record the situation. Being half fox, he possessed natural strength and speed. He texted his location to the police and his father just in case. Spotting a metal pipe nearby, he dashed toward the boys stealthily and swung the pipe with all his might at the one trying to grab Momo. The impact sent him flying into the others, knocking them down. Seizing the opportunity, he quickly struck each of them on the head to incapacitate them. Finding some sturdy rope, he tied them up to ensure they couldn't escape. I grabbed my phone from the wall and stopped recording. Then I went towards the girls and hugged them. They started thanking me and crying. I wouldn't blame them for crying. God knows what would have happened if I hadn't been there. After 5 minutes, the police arrived and asked what had happened. I explained the situation, and they seemed skeptical when I said I hadn't used my quirk, so I showed them the video I had recorded. They were satisfied and arrested the kids who had just regained consciousness. The girls were still hugging each other and wouldn't let go when the officers informed them they would take them home. At that moment, my dad arrived in a car, despite his license being suspended for a week due to 𝗬𝗪 acting on his own during an internship. He quickly asked me what had happened, and I explained everything to him. He was relieved that nothing had happened to me and felt proud that I had saved them without breaking any rules while also collecting evidence. The police contacted Momo's parents to inform them of the details, and they arrived in under 5 minutes. I was shocked at how quickly they came. They rushed towards the girls and hugged them tightly before watching the video. After seeing it, Mr. Yaoyorozu came towards me, thanking me repeatedly while Mrs. Yaoyorozu consoled the girls. Mr. Yaoyorozu then turned toward my father, surprised to see him. He said that he thought my dad was suspended from duty for a week. During this, the girls and Mrs. Yaoyorozu approached us. My dad chuckled and explained that I had sent him a message, prompting him to come as quickly as possible. He mentioned that I had already handled the situation and was being praised by the people when he arrived. They were astonished to learn that the famous endevour had an adopted son. Momo and Kyoka quickly came towards me and gave me a quick peck on the lips each. I was taken aback for a moment, blushing intensely, so I quickly wrapped myself in my tails to hide my face, but it was too late. My father and Momo's parents were laughing at the scene while Kyoka and Momo blushed furiously at what had just happened. Momo's parents invited me to spend the night with them so they could thank me properly. I was about to refuse when my dad said that I would be happy to join them. I turned to my dad with a betrayed expression, only to see him smirking mischievously. Well, my fate was sealed. There was no way I could refuse them after my father accepted. Izuku stood before a magnificent mansion, feeling a mix of awe and nervousness. It was no surprise, considering it belonged to the Yaoyorosis. Saki-san turned towards him and welcomed him to their home, hoping he would enjoy his stay. He replied, asking her to call him Izuku. She smiled and nodded while he was still embraced by Momo and Kyoka, which he didn't mind since he loved hugs. Once inside, the girls eagerly led him to their respective rooms, and he marveled at the size of their spaces and Kyoka's music equipment. After exploring their rooms, they were called for dinner. Izuku sat between Kyoka and Momo, facing Saki-san and Zashi-san. He was amazed by the variety of dishes laid out before them. After saying their prayers, they dug into the food. 20 minutes later, after dinner, they settled on the couches and shared stories about how they met and their usual hangout sessions. During the conversation, Momo accidentally revealed that Izuku sang. Immediately, her parents leaned in closer, asking him to sing for them with excitement in their eyes. He then asked Momo and Kyoka to fetch a guitar while he spoke to Momo's parents. Once they left, he stood up, slightly bowed, and asked if he could propose his feelings for Momo and Kyoka through a song. He didn't look up, worried they might be upset, but was surprised when Saki-san pulled him into a gentle hug. Zashi-san looked at him and said they supported his longing to date both girls and were sure Kyoka's parents would agree as well, granting him their blessings. Overjoyed, Izuku instinctively wrapped his tails around them and pulled them into a group hug. They were momentarily taken aback but soon embraced him back. Realizing what he had done, he jumped back and started apologizing, explaining that he often hugged those he trusted when he was happy. They simply smiled and reassured him that they appreciated the warmth of his hug. Feeling relieved, he wrapped them in his tails again until Momo playfully interrupted, asking when he would let her parents go, knowing how much he loved cuddles and hugs. He immediately released them and turned to see Momo and Kyoka pouting. In response, he transformed into his wolf form and leaped onto the couch, hugging them while they played with his tails and ears. This continued for a moment until he remembered his original plan and released them to grab the guitar. The protagonist addressed Kyoka and Momo, playfully mentioning that the song was for them, chuckling at the sight of their starry eyes and flushed cheeks. After tuning the guitar for a moment, he began to sing a heartfelt song, expressing his feelings and the connection he shared with them. Once he finished singing, he looked at Kyoka and Momo, who were still blushing, and shared his feelings. He confessed that he had loved them since 2 months ago and appreciated their kindness when they first met. To his surprise, Momo rushed forward and kissed him gently for about 5 seconds before pulling back with a radiant smile. Kyoka followed suit, sharing a similar moment before both girls expressed their affection for him. He wrapped his tails around them, pulling them into a warm embrace, and soon drifted off to sleep against their shoulders while standing. From Momo's perspective, she noticed he had fallen asleep while hugging them. She and Kyoka exchanged a small giggle, and Momo then asked her parents if the 3 of them could sleep together in her bed. They smiled and agreed. Momo and 𝐕𝐁𝐻 found him surprisingly lightweight as they carried him to her room. They placed him in the middle of the bed and cuddled up on either side, soon falling asleep enveloped in his warmth. From Izuku's perspective, he awoke to an unfamiliar ceiling and the sensation of two weights against him, realizing it was Momo and 𝐕𝐁𝐻 on either side. Checking the clock, he saw it was 5:30 a.m. Not wanting to disturb them, he carefully wiggled free and made his way to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. He was impressed by the high-tech kitchen, which made cooking easy. He whipped up pancakes according to what he guessed were their preferences and finished around 7 a.m., setting the plates at the table. As the family members began to come down, they were pleasantly surprised to see breakfast ready. He brought over some orange juice and explained that he had woken up early and decided to make breakfast. They eagerly devoured the meal, which made him chuckle. At the end of the meal, Momo and 𝐕𝐁𝐻 gave him a quick peck on the cheek, thanking him sweetly. He blushed and returned their smiles, only to be enveloped in hugs from the rest of the family, who exclaimed how adorable he was. After breakfast, he said goodbye to everyone, giving Momo and 𝐕𝐁𝐻 a gentle kiss before heading home. Upon arriving home, he was immediately greeted with hugs from his mother and sisters, who were concerned after seeing him on the news saving Momo and 𝐕𝐁𝐻. They bombarded him with questions about where he had been the night before. When they finally let go, Shoko, with a dark aura surrounding her, inquired why he smelled like two women's perfume. Fuyumi joined in, her own dark aura forming as their mother squealed about the two lucky women. Feeling apprehensive about revealing the truth, he mustered the courage to explain what happened after saving Momo and 𝐕𝐁𝐻, omitting the part about singing. As he finished, he noticed a jealous aura around Fuyumi and Shoko. Realizing their feelings, he quickly ran to his room and returned with a ukulele to sing the song he had created for them. When he reappeared, his family was gathered on the couch, with Fuyumi and Shoko pouting while his brothers attempted to cheer them up. They all looked at him with confusion as he held the ukulele, ready to perform. The protagonist took a deep breath and expressed feelings for Fuyumi and Shoko, revealing that he had a crush on them since he was 9 years old and had even written a song to express his emotions. The song conveyed his feelings of longing and admiration, emphasizing how their absence made him feel lost. He felt that there was no better place than by their side and that, despite the many girls around, they were the only ones on his mind. He confessed his love for both Fuyumi and Shoko, acknowledging that they might be upset with him for confessing while already having 2 girlfriends. He braced himself for rejection but was taken by surprise when Shoko kissed him unexpectedly. After a moment of shock, he reciprocated her kiss. They broke apart for air, only for Fuyumi to kiss him next. After a moment, she reassured him that it was natural for someone with a quirk to have relationships with multiple girls, and they understood he had feelings for Momo and 𝐕𝐁𝐻 as well. He then embraced both girls, wrapping his tails around them. His father commented on his charm at such a young age, teasing that his HRM would likely grow. The moment was filled with joy as his brothers and mother congratulated him. Later, he found himself on the couch cuddling with Fuyumi and Shoko, who were playfully interacting with his tails. Suddenly, he received a phone call from Momo. He answered, and she asked if he would go on a date with her and 𝐕𝐁𝐻. He happily agreed and asked if Fuyumi and Shoko could join, explaining his long-time feelings for them. Momo excitedly responded that it was about time he confessed and agreed that it would be a great opportunity for everyone to get to know each other better. They decided to meet at the mall for lunch before their date. After hanging up, he shared the news with Fuyumi and Shoko, who were both thrilled about the date. As the hour approached before the date, Fuyumi felt a mix of excitement and nervousness, hoping that Izuku would like the dress she had chosen for him. She cherished the song he had written for her and Shoko and wondered how he managed to keep his talent a secret. Meanwhile, Shoko was also feeling anxious about the date, questioning if she looked good and if he would like her dress. She was still in awe of his singing ability and how wonderful the song had been. The stage was set for their upcoming date, filled with anticipation and excitement for what was to come. She felt upset that he had confessed to Momo and 𝐕𝐁𝐻 first instead of her. Nevertheless, it was time to meet up with Momo and 𝐕𝐁𝐻 for their date with Aizu. At Yaoyoro's mansion, 𝐕𝐁𝐻 hurried to Momo's room and kicked the door open, surprising Momo, who was admiring herself in the mirror. 𝐂𝐭𝐲 approached Momo and asked how she looked. Momo turned to her and said she looked absolutely fantastic. Then, Momo spun around in her dress and inquired about her own appearance. 𝗂𝐭𝐲 examined Momo's dress and remarked with a smirk that it could make anyone question their preferences, causing Momo to blush at the compliment. They made their way downstairs to inform their parents about their date. Momo announced that she and 𝗂𝐭𝐲 were going on a date with izuku. Her parents smiled and encouraged them to have fun, reminding them to return before 9 p.m. with izuku. Momo looked puzzled and asked why they wanted izuku to join them. Saki explained that the Kodai family was visiting later that day, and she had sent them a picture of izuku, who they wanted to meet. Momo realized that the Kodai family adored foxes and agreed, hoping izuku would be on board as well. Afterward, 𝗂𝐭𝐲 and 𝗓𝗪 left to meet 𝗵𝘃𝗓 and 𝗂𝐭 at the station, as izuku had said he would meet them there. At the metro station, 𝗵𝘃𝗓 waved to Momo and 𝗂𝐭𝐲, calling them over. They approached and asked if izuku had arrived yet. 𝗂𝐭 replied that he had told them to go ahead and that he would be a bit late, prompting 𝗂𝐭𝐲 to wonder if he had something to do. They chatted for a while, complimenting each other's fashion choices, when they suddenly heard a familiar voice calling out to them. They turned and blushed at the sight of izuku. The girls were momentarily entranced by izuku's appearance, but quickly regained their composure when he exclaimed how appealing they all looked, expressing his amazement at his luck. They headed to a nearby restaurant where Momo had made a reservation for 5. Once seated, they looked over the menus. After deciding on their orders, Momo rang a bell for the waitress. A middle-aged man approached their table and asked for their order. Momo requested 2 hamburger steaks, 1 tempura bowl, 1 chicken sukiyaki, kimchi casserole, 2 orange juices, 2 Diet Cokes, and a fruit punch. The waiter noted their order, bowed, and informed them it would take about 15 minutes. As they waited, they discussed their plans for after lunch and decided to visit a nearby amusement park to enjoy the rest of the day. They would then take Momo's limo to drop off 𝗂𝐭𝐲 and 𝗵𝘃𝗓 before heading to Momo's house, as her parents had invited izuku over. When their food arrived, they said their prayers and took their first bites, marveling at how delicious everything was. After finishing their meal, they walked to the amusement park, which was just 5 minutes away. Izuku rushed to the ticket counter and returned with 5 VIP tickets, allowing them to skip the lines for each ride. Inside the amusement park, they headed straight for the spinning cups. The girls played rock, paper, scissors to decide who would sit with izuku, with Momo and 𝗵𝘃𝗓 winning the chance. Izuku then invited 𝗂𝐭𝐲 and 𝗂𝐭 to join him on the Ferris wheel, which brightened their spirits, as it was the best ride in the park. Izuku sat in a red cup with Momo and 𝗵𝘃𝗓, while 𝗂𝐭𝐲 and 𝗂𝐭 shared a cup with a child who needed a seat. The ride spun quickly, and Momo, feeling a bit scared, clung to Izuku's tails for comfort, which surprisingly helped. After the spinning cups, they explored various rides and shops, where Izuku won plushies that the girls had their eyes on. As the sun began to set around 6:30 p.m., they boarded the Ferris wheel to take in the view. As promised, 𝗂𝐭𝐲 and 𝗂𝐭 sat with Izuku, hugging his arms, while Momo and 𝗵𝘃𝗓 sat opposite, pouting at not being able to hug him. In a sweet gesture, Izuku extended his tails around the 2 pouting girls, wrapping them gently. When they reached the top of the Ferris wheel, they were awestruck by the appealing sunset over the city. Seizing the moment, Izuku reached into his pocket and pulled out 4 cases, handing one to each girl. They opened the cases, their eyes lighting up with excitement, and thanked Izuku in unison. He responded with a gentle kiss on each of their lips, which they returned warmly. They adorned themselves with the necklaces Izuku had given them, each one unique and special. Izuku complimented them, saying they looked lovely, and they all shared a group hug, tackling him playfully. After a minute or two, Momo called her driver to pick them up at the entrance of the amusement park. They waited for the limo to arrive, and once it did, they got in and first headed to the Todoroki household to drop off 𝗂𝐭 and 𝗵𝘃𝗓. Upon arriving, Izuku gave his sisters a peck on the cheek and a hug, bidding them farewell. He expressed his hope that they had enjoyed the day as much as he had. 𝗵𝘃𝗓 smiled and assured him that it had been a lot of fun, hoping they could do it again soon. 𝗂𝐭 then surprised Izuku with a quick peck on the lips, thanking him for the appealing necklace and the fox plushie he had won for her, promising to treasure them always. Izuku smiled and mentioned that everyone should expect a lot of gifts from him, causing all the girls to beam at their boyfriend's words. After saying goodbye to Shoko and Fuyumi, Izuku, Momo, and Kyoka climbed back into the limo, heading to Momo's house at her parents' request. After a 30-minute drive, they arrived at the door of Momo's home. Momo rang the bell, and a butler opened the door. The group entered and settled on the couch while conversing with Saki and Zashi, sharing stories about their date and showing off the necklace Izuku had given Momo's parents, who smiled at the gesture. During the conversation, Izuku cuddled with Kyoka, his tails extending toward each family member, inviting them to pet him. They smiled at his fox-like nature, enjoying the interaction as they continued their discussion. This continued until 8 p.m. when a butler announced the arrival of the Kodai family. From Yui Kodai's perspective, she and her parents entered the hall and were greeted by the sight of an incredibly adorable boy with fox ears hugging Kyoka, his tails wrapped around Momo and her parents, who were all cuddling with him. Unable to contain herself, Yui dashed over, pulled him away from Kyoka, and tackled him onto the couch, cuddling with him. After a few moments, she got off the couch and approached her parents as if nothing had happened. Looking around, she noticed the shocked and confused expressions on the faces of the 𝐎𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐳 and Kyoka, as well as the blushing face of the fox boy she had just cuddled. She apologized for her impulsive behavior, expressing that she couldn't control herself at the sight of the cutest fox boy. Momo sighed, having anticipated this reaction, and teased Izuku about how he felt. He, still blushing, admitted that he was shocked but had really enjoyed the cuddle. Yui then declared her affection for him, stating that she loved him and intended to marry him, pointing at the fox boy. Her parents smiled, and her mother gave her blessings. Yui then playfully tackled Izuku again, planting a kiss on him. His lips were soft and had a hint of cinnamon. After a minute of kissing, during which he initially tried to resist but eventually gave in, she pulled away and looked at Momo, expressing her longing to join his harem. Momo sighed again, acknowledging that she had expected this, and decided to call his other two girlfriends to ask for their approval. Confused by this, Yui turned to Kyoka, who was watching with a hint of jealousy, and inquired about how many girlfriends Izuku had. Kyoka explained that he had a total of 3 in his harem, including her, Momo, Shoko Todoroki, and Fuyumi, who were his stepsisters. Yui absorbed this information and looked at the boy, who was blushing even more intensely, and asked for his name. He stammered that his name was Izuku Midoriya and asked for hers. She smiled and introduced herself as Yui Kodai, continuing to cuddle with him on the floor. Momo then announced that Yui was approved by his other girlfriends, but Izuku hesitantly asked if he had a say in the matter. In unison, Momo, Yui, and Kyoka replied that he did not, which made him give up. Yui got off him and sat on the couch, leaving him on the floor. Izuku pouted and remarked on his submissiveness, to which everyone in the room agreed. He then ran over to Momo's father, hugging him and pleading for help, looking adorably pitiful. Momo's father chuckled, saying it was better to face villains than women in love, which elicited laughter from everyone. Meanwhile, Izuku remained there, hugging Momo's father, his tails wrapped around Momo's mother, who was cuddling with them. Yui felt a pang of jealousy, wishing for a chance to cuddle with those fluffy tails. Realizing that she and Izuku attended different schools, Yui turned to her parents and announced her intention to transfer to his middle school at the start of their second year, to which they agreed. During the past 2.5 years, Izuku had grown significantly stronger and discovered various uses for his quirk. He trained relentlessly while also spending quality time with his 5 girlfriends. Now, at Todoroki's household, Izuku had called his family for an important meeting. Everyone gathered in the hall, sitting on the couches, curious about the news. After settling down, Izuku announced his decision to move out of their house to an apartment in the Mustafa area. His family was shocked by this news. His father was the first to recover and asked for the reason behind this sudden decision. Izuku turned to his father and explained that he had trained hard and found various ways to improve his quirk, but he still felt he could become much stronger. He shared that while walking the day before, he had stumbled upon the Dagoba Municipal Beach, which was filled with electronic waste and trash. He believed that cleaning the beach would help improve his muscle flexibility and allow him to practice vaporizing the trash with his blue fire, giving him better control while also beautifying the beach. His family was surprised but smiled at his determination. His mother approached him and asked him to call them every day, to which he assured her he would. Turning to Shoko and Fuyumi, who looked sad, he mentioned that he wouldn't be able to see them for the next 10 months as he wanted to devote himself entirely to training. They looked at him with determined expressions, and Fuyumi declared that they would also train and be stronger by the time they met again at UA. Izuku nodded and informed them that he had already discussed his decision with Momo, Kwoka, and Yui. He then explained that he had spoken to the apartment owner and that a moving company would arrive shortly to transport his belongings. He apologized for not informing them earlier. 𝗬𝗓 offered his help regarding Izuku's quirk, but Izuku smiled and replied that he needed to figure things out on his own. After a few minutes of chatting, the moving company arrived and loaded Izuku's belongings into the truck, heading to the new address. Izuku bid them farewell, promising to call every day. He expressed his gratitude to his father for adopting him, stating that this family was the best thing that ever happened to him. He vowed to be stronger than all might by their next meeting, raising his fists in the air. Enji responded, thanking him and assuring him that he was also the best thing that happened to them, urging him not to overwork himself. Izuku nodded and left for his new home. After an hour's journey, he arrived at his new room, where the moving company had finished setting up his belongings. He spent the evening unpacking and arranging everything as he wanted, placing his music equipment in a separate room for songwriting. After organizing his things, he ordered takeout since he needed to shop for cooking ingredients. By the time his food arrived at 8:30 p.m., he quickly finished eating and went to bed. The next morning, Izuku woke up to his alarm at 5 a.m. He got ready in his training clothes and set out for a 10 kilometers run around the city towards Dagoba Beach. After 10 minutes of running at his top speed of 65 kilometers per hour, he arrived at the beach, which was still littered with trash. He did some light stretches before starting to lift the trash, transporting it 500 meters to a spot where he could vaporize it without being seen. It wasn't too difficult, given his extensive workout routine. He continued this until 7 a.m. before heading home to prepare for school. After school, at 4 p.m., Izuku returned home, ready to head back to the beach. By 4:30 p.m., he was cleaning until 6 p.m., then practiced martial arts while using his quirk to adapt quickly and gain better control until 8 p.m. Feeling satisfied with his progress for the day, he activated his lightning mode to reach home in 1 minute. He took a bath, cooked with the groceries he had brought home after school, and aimed to be in bed by 9:30 p.m. In the first month, the protagonist familiarized himself with his training and discovered that he could cover his legs and arms with concentrated blue fire, which enhanced his attacks and caused minor burns to his opponents. By the second month, he learned that channeling lightning through his tails in lightning mode made them strong enough to punch through steel. He adapted to using lightning mode for longer PRDS and combined his tails with martial arts, effectively gaining 9 extra powerful arms. This significantly increased his attack speed and allowed him to break through defenses in mere seconds. At the end of the second month, he returned home from school, excited to learn that his application for the entrance exam had been accepted. As he walked through a tunnel, a manhole suddenly opened, and a slimy creature emerged, eyeing him hungrily. Without hesitation, he activated his lightning mode and struck it with a powerful punch, sending it sprawling across the road. He quickly gathered the remains in a bottle, intending to hand it over to the police. Just as he was about to leave, he heard a familiar voice calling out. All Might appeared, looking for the villain. The protagonist smiled and explained that he had already defeated it and offered the bottle to All Might. The hero looked at him in surprise and exclaimed that he had a quirk, noting how rare it was for males to possess such abilities. The protagonist acknowledged this and mentioned that he was applying for UA in 10 months. All Might asked for his name and quirk, to which he introduced himself as Izuku Midoriya, explaining that his quirk, called Kitsune, allowed him to control blue fire and lightning, enhancing his physical abilities. All Might was taken aback but quickly regained his composure, expressing confidence in the protagonist's potential as a great hero. He then leaped away, leaving the protagonist in awe of the legendary hero. Afterward, he visited a nearby grocery store. Upon finishing his shopping, he noticed a commotion where MT Lady was trying to navigate through a crowd without causing chaos. He rushed over to find 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗏 struggling against the slime monster he had previously defeated, which had somehow returned. The slime was attempting to suffocate a boy his age with spiky ash-blonde hair, who was using his explosions to keep himself from being overwhelmed. Ignoring the protests of the pro-heroes, he dashed past the barrier set up by 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗏. Activating his lightning mode once more, he delivered a swift punch to the slime monster, then lifted the unconscious boy and tossed him to 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗏. He grabbed another bottle, captured the villain again, and handed it to 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗏, who was astonished by his actions. He apologized for intervening but felt he couldn't stand by while someone was in danger. 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗏 chuckled, and the pro-heroes praised his quick thinking. Suddenly, MT Lady pulled him into a hug, giving him a quick peck on the cheek and thanking him for his help, which made him blush in front of the reporters. A female reporter approached him, microphone in hand, asking for his name and why he had intervened despite the warnings from the pro-heroes. He smiled and explained that, although he wasn't a hero, he couldn't ignore someone in peril. After answering questions for 10 minutes, he left the scene. On his way home, he heard someone calling out to him. Turning around, he saw the boy he had saved, now exhausted but grateful. The boy thanked him for saving his life and asked if he was applying to UA. The protagonist replied that he was glad the boy was safe and complimented his powerful quirk. The boy introduced himself as Katsuki Bakugu, stating that he would beat him in the exams but asked for his number. They exchanged numbers and chatted for a while before parting ways, marking the beginning of a new friendship and rivalry. 10 months before the UA entrance exam, he had cleaned up about 35% of the beach, gaining attention and becoming somewhat of a local celebrity. Even the president visited him, presenting a medal and a reward of $2 million, which he initially tried to decline but ultimately accepted, depositing it in a bank to earn interest. 8 months before the entrance exam, he discovered that concentrating high-voltage lightning in his legs during lightning mode allowed him to break the sound barrier, reaching speeds of 550 meters per second, which he dubbed Godspeed mode. He also learned to paralyze opponents by sending high-voltage lightning from his hands, which lasted for 10 seconds, plenty of time for him to unleash a rapid barrage of attacks with his tails, hitting up to 40 times per second in lightning mode. Izuku began training his basic moves, including a blue flamethrower and a dual element strike that combined blue fire and lightning for a long-range attack. He also developed a thunder attack, capable of delivering over 4 million volts, which he could control. 6 months before entering UA, he finished cleaning 80% of the beach and mastered all the attacks he knew at that point. He created a one-hit knockout move called the dual element tail strike, which concentrated his lightning and fire into his tails and legs for a powerful physical strike. This move drained most of his stamina, so he reserved it for dire situations. 3 months before UA entrance, he celebrated his 15th birthday with Bakugu, who was free that day. Izuku also discovered a way to spread blue fire and lightning around his body and tails, which he named Dual Element Mode. This mode allowed him to reach speeds of Mach 15, faster than All Might by 2 Machs. He was able to separate the ocean for 2 kilometers with a single full power punch, but could only maintain it for 3 minutes before becoming completely exhausted. 1 month before UA entrance, he spent the last 2 months increasing the duration of his dual element mode to 10 minutes before feeling fatigued. He also created his own style of martial arts, combining all the techniques he had learned throughout his childhood with his tails. Standing at 6 feet 1 inch, he had developed a well-built, lean physique. The day before UA entrance, he dedicated his last month to studying for the written portion of the exam. He set his alarm for 6 a.m. to ensure he could rest well and stretch before the exam, which started at 9 a.m. On the morning of the exam, he woke up, brushed his teeth, went for a jog, stretched, took a bath, and dressed in his middle school uniform. He packed his stationery and battle suit into his yellow backpack, made some toast, and ran toward the exam site, arriving at 8:30 a.m. As he walked inside, he noticed many girls with various mutation quirks. Next to him was a girl with long red hair and a well-built figure, her smile complementing her looks. Just as he was about to introduce himself, he saw her slip on a small stone and began to fall. Quickly, he extended one of his tails to 6 meters, wrapping it around her to prevent her from hitting the ground. From 𝐈𝐺𝐻𝑜 Kirishima's perspective, when she was about to fall, she closed her eyes and braced for impact. Instead, she felt a soft, fluffy substance wrap around her and lift her back to her feet. Looking down, she saw a fluffy green-haired tail around her waist. Turning to her side, she noticed a handsome boy with cute fox ears and 8 tails wagging around, with the 9th tail still extended. Blushing slightly, she realized he had saved her and smiled brightly, thanking him for his help. He smiled back and remarked that it would be bad luck to kiss the ground before the exam. They shared a laugh, and he retracted his tail to its original size as they walked into a grand hall, where they sat beside each other and waited for someone to give a speech. From Izuku's perspective, he sat next to Kirishima and noticed an appealing girl with dark blue eyes and hair tied into 2 braids, wearing rectangular spectacles that gave her a studious vibe. He was about to introduce himself when the lights suddenly went out, and a spotlight illuminated the stage where the loud pro-heroine Present Mic walked to the center. Frustrated by the interruption, he yelled back when Present Mic called out to the audience, eliciting a response from him that made the pro-heroine shed anime tears of joy, thanking him for breaking the tension. As Present Mic explained the exam details, Izuku listened closely. Contestants would be divided into 10 separate blocks, and he noticed he was in Block 1 while Kirishima was in Block 4. He wished her good luck, hoping they would be in the same class. She returned the sentiment, expressing her surprise at seeing a boy with a quirk at their age. They said their goodbyes and boarded the buses provided by UA, marveling at the number of vehicles dedicated to the exam. The writing part of the exam began with a 1-hour time limit. Izuku found the exam quite easy, finishing his paper within 20 minutes, which surprised the girls around him. After submitting his paper, he changed into his jumpsuit, which was slightly large for him to allow for free movement. He then proceeded to the area designated for the practical part of the test. After 10 minutes, the girl with braided dark blue hair approached him, introducing herself as 𝗕𝗏𝐿𝐸𝐷 and commenting on how quickly he had completed the test. 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗲 smiled and introduced himself, stating that he was quite studious and hadn't missed a single question. As they chatted, he noticed that many of the girls around him were looking at him with a mix of confusion, amazement, and surprise, some even blushing. However, he didn't quite understand the attention he was receiving. Just then, Present Mic arrived and pressed a button that opened the gates. Izuku quickly activated his lightning mode, and everyone followed suit. He dashed toward a nearby group of robots, using lightning-enhanced punches while extending his tails to their limits. With his lightning instincts, he skillfully defended against the robots trying to surround him. After 10 minutes of intense action, he heard Present Mic announce that there were only 5 minutes left. Having already acquired 130 robot points, he decided to assist a few other participants for the remainder of the time. From Nizu's perspective, he observed the boy with 9-tailed fox features performing exceptionally well. Not only was he helping others, but he also displayed the qualities of a top hero. Nizu turned to the other teachers and remarked on the impressive abilities of this year's participants. He noticed Eraserhead smirking and expressing his longing to have Izuku Midoriya in his class. Nizu was surprised by this, knowing Eraserhead's reputation as a strict teacher who had expelled an entire class the previous year due to a lack of potential. Nizu agreed, intrigued by the boy's capabilities, and then prepared to initiate the next challenge by pressing the red button. Suddenly, the ground shook, and Izuku was confused until he spotted a massive robot, larger than a building, smashing through structures. Everyone around him was fleeing in panic. Just as he was about to walk away, he heard someone cry for help. Turning around, he saw 2 girls, one with green vine-like hair praying and the other with orange hair tied in a ponytail, struggling to lift rubble with her quirk. They were in imminent danger from the 0-pointer. Activating his lightning mode to full power, Izuku swiftly positioned himself in front of the 0-pointer and delivered a powerful punch, sending the robot crashing back and exploding into pieces. He then landed and, using his enhanced strength, lifted a heavy wall aside, offering his hands to the girls. They accepted his help, and despite their initial shock, they embraced his fluffy tails as he lifted them up. He carried them to an elderly woman he recognized as Recovery Girl, who was healing others nearby. Holding the two girls in front of her, he requested her assistance, explaining that their legs were injured. Recovery Girl nodded and gently kissed their foreheads, healing their injuries. The girls appeared exhausted, and she provided them with gummy treats to help restore their stamina. Although Izuku felt fine, he accepted the sweets, turning to the girls he had rescued and introducing himself with a smile. They returned his smile, and the girl with green vine hair introduced herself as Shizuki Ibara, expressing her gratitude for his help. The orange-haired girl introduced herself as Itsuka Kendo, agreeing with Ibara that they would have been seriously hurt without his intervention. Izuku stated that he couldn't ignore danger if he wanted to be a hero. The girls began to pat his head, prompting a playful sound from him. Ibara then hugged him, nuzzling their cheeks together and calling him a perfect creation. After the exam, they exchanged phone numbers and promised to meet again soon. A week later, Izuku heard the mail being delivered and rushed to his door to retrieve a letter. He opened it and activated a device that projected a hologram of All Might. The hero congratulated him on passing the writing portion with a score of 98.8%, the highest in history, and for earning an impressive 250 points in the practical exam. All Might explained that the extra points came from a secret classification for rescue points, as Izuku had saved 12 girls, earning 10 points for each rescue. He welcomed Izuku to Class 1A at U, and expressed his happiness at seeing him return stronger than before. As the hologram faded, Izuku felt tears of joy. His dream of entering U with top points had come true. He immediately informed his family, who were initially shocked but then filled with pride. His father praised him for his achievements but reminded him to stay humble and continue training. Izuku reassured his dad that he would never stop improving. He then called his other friends and families to share the good news, receiving congratulations and learning that his hero costume was being completed and would soon be submitted to UA. There was still 1 week left before UA started, and the character was excited about the opportunity to hang out with Bakugo, Kirishima, Ida, Kendo, and Ibara during this time. They had mentioned that they had made it into the school, and the character was eager to get to know them better. As the character began packing clothes for the move into the dorms, they learned that there was no need to bring furniture since the school had already duplicated their rooms. This revelation was surprising. It raised questions about how UA had managed to gather such information. The character couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy about the idea of being watched, which made them apprehensive about sleeping at night. With a word count of 4,730, this was the longest piece they had written yet, and they hoped it would be worth it. The next chapter would cover the first 2 days in the dorms, introductions, and more. They were still open to HRM recommendations as well. It was time to dash forward to the next chapter. Time skipped to 6 a.m. on the first day at UA. Izuku woke up, did some light stretches, and began getting ready to leave the apartment. By 7 o'clock, he locked the door and started running while carrying 2 suitcases and his backpack filled with clothes. At 7:25 a.m., he arrived in front of the Heights Alliance dormitories, which had been introduced this year. Upon entering, he noticed that no one had arrived yet. He placed his suitcases in his room, which was filled with music equipment, a wardrobe, a double bed, and a study table with a laptop, all set against walls painted emerald green and black. He then went downstairs to make breakfast for himself. As he was preparing some French toast with jam, he spotted Katsuki, who had just arrived. Izuku walked over, gave him a fist bump, and expressed his excitement about being in the same class. Katsuki smirked, saying that now he would have the chance to defeat Izuku. They chatted while enjoying breakfast together. After 8 a.m., Momo, Jirou, Shoko, and Fuyumi entered together. Izuku playfully sneaked up from behind, wrapping his tails around each of them for a group hug, expressing how much he missed those moments. They responded with affectionate pecks on his cheek before he released them to check out their rooms. Time skipped to 9 a.m. when everyone arrived. With 20 students present, it seemed that the entire class was accounted for. The atmosphere was a bit awkward, so Izuku stood up and suggested that everyone introduce themselves with a piece of information about themselves. Everyone nodded in agreement, and since he was already there, he went first. He introduced himself as Izuku Midoriya and shared that he had 5 girlfriends, 4 of whom were present. The room filled with surprised expressions, and questions about his girlfriends began to circulate. Izuku gestured for the next person to step forward. Fuyumi introduced herself, confirming she was one of Izuku's girlfriends. Shoko followed, stating she was also one of his girlfriends. Momo stood up next, adding her name to the list. Kyoka then introduced herself, mentioning she was also one of Izuku's girlfriends, with the last one being in Class 1B. Katsuki stood up next, declaring himself as Katsuki Bokogu and asserting that he would be the strongest in the class. Izuku sighed, reassuring everyone that Katsuki was nice once you got to know him. After Katsuki sat down, the girl next to him introduced herself as Ochako Uraraka, sharing that her quirk was 0 gravity. A short boy stood up next, introducing himself as Minoru Mineta and making a rather bold statement about wanting all the girls, especially Izuku. Before Izuku could react, Katsuki swiftly threw him out the window. Mina then stood up, cheerfully introducing herself as Mina Ishido, who loved dancing and hanging out. Tenya stood up next, sharing that he was Tenya Ida and enjoyed running and studying. Ijiro Kirishima introduced himself, expressing his love for working out, which made Izuku think of him as a potential gym buddy. A girl whose clothing was quite minimal jumped up and down to get everyone's attention, introducing herself as Toru Hagakure and sharing her love for stuffed animals. Following her, a girl with a long tongue stood up and introduced herself as Tsu Ajui, asking to be called Tsu. Next, a blonde girl introduced herself as Denki Kaminari, who enjoyed hanging out with people. Hana Siro stood up after her, sharing her love for doing unexpected things. A tall girl with a mask covering half her face and multiple arms introduced herself as Shojino Mizo, revealing her quirk, dupli arms. Curious, Izuku approached Shojino and asked if being hugged by 6 arms felt better than 2. As he tilted his head in confusion, he heard some girls exclaim how cute he was. Shojino opened her arms wide, and Izuku took the opportunity to hug her. The embrace felt heavenly as she wrapped her 6 arms around him. He then playfully wrapped his tails around her, noticing some glares from others but choosing to ignore them. After a moment, she released him, but he pouted, expressing his reluctance to let go. He asked if he could hug her whenever he wanted, using his best puppy eyes. Shojino smiled and agreed, saying he was quite warm to hug. Suddenly, Mineta came running toward them, yelling about wanting to hug Shojino as well. Izuku quickly used his tail to swat him away and clung to Shojino like a small child, declaring her hugs as his. He then looked around and noticed his girlfriends emitting a dark aura. Concerned, he asked Kyoka, Momo, Shoko, and Fuyumi why they seemed angry. Kyoka scolded him, insisting there would be no hugging other girls. Feeling a bit hurt, Izuku transformed into his fox form and hid behind Kirishima. Momo suggested that Kyoka should calm down, noting that they all knew Izuku was innocent when it came to these matters. She playfully bet that he didn't even know what a French kiss was. Curiosity piqued, Izuku transformed back to his human form and asked what a French kiss was. He noticed the girls and Katsuki looking at him with incredulous expressions. He questioned why they were staring, insisting that he simply wanted to know about it. Shoko approached him and instructed him to kneel down. He complied, albeit confused, as she told him to open his mouth slightly. In a surprising move, she pressed her lips against his, intertwining their tongues in a playful dance. It felt exhilarating, and he realized this was what a French kiss was. He reciprocated, swirling his tongue around hers. They continued for a moment before parting, a thin strand of saliva connecting them briefly before Shoko liked it away. Izuku was in awe of the experience and expressed his enjoyment, asking for another round. Looking around, he noticed everyone blushing and looking away. He asked why the girls were avoiding eye contact and why their cheeks were flushed. They all chimed in, insisting they had to maintain his innocence. He shrugged and turned back to Shoko, complimenting her on the taste of her tongue, which was a mix of sweet and sour. This made her flustered, and she playfully called him foolish before running away to sit in a corner, avoiding his gaze. Feeling sad, Izuku's ears drooped, and his tail stopped wagging. He pleaded for her not to ignore him, expressing the pain in his heart while holding back tears. However, Shoko remained distant, prompting him to retreat to his room. He picked up his guitar and returned to the hall, where everyone looked at him in surprise, exclaiming their excitement about him playing guitar. He mentioned that he also sang and gestured for everyone to follow him outside. They made their way to the principal's office, where he found several pro-heroes looking at him curiously. He asked if the principal was present. A cute creature resembling a mix of a dog and a bear introduced itself as Nizu, the principal, and inquired about his guitar. Izuku scratched his cheeks, explaining that since it was the first day, he thought a little concert in the auditorium would be a nice idea. The teachers were taken aback, but Nizu agreed, stating he would make an announcement right away. Izuku smiled and left to prepare. After Izuku departed, Nizu turned to the teachers, noting that the day had become more interesting. Midnight, with stars in her eyes, questioned whether he would be good, expressing concern that if he wasn't, it would be a waste of time. Nizu reassured her, citing Izuku's confidence and the potential benefits for the students. He decided to ask him to perform 2 songs. Nizu then made an announcement throughout UA, calling all students from 1st to 3rd year to report to the main auditorium for a surprise event organized by the top scorer in the entrance exam, Izuku Midoriya. He encouraged the teachers to join as well, and everyone except Eraserhead was filled with excitement. Time passed, and everyone gathered in the auditorium. Izuku peeked from behind the curtain, noticing not only students and teachers but also a few pro-heroes, including his favorite, Mirko, sitting with Hawks. He stepped into the center of the stage, concealing his guitar with his tails, and took the microphone. He greeted the UA staff, students, and pro-heroes, announcing that he had called everyone together for a concert. With enthusiasm, he tossed his guitar into the air and caught it skillfully. He playfully mentioned that there was a system in place preventing anyone from recording the event. He announced that he would perform 5 of his original songs from a collection of over 100 and would let the audience choose the genres. The first song, he declared, was dedicated to his favorite heroine, someone he had a crush on. The crowd buzzed with curiosity, asking who she was and if she was present. Izuku teased that she was there, describing her as a 23-year-old with white hair and tan skin. At that moment, the spotlight fell on Mirko, who stood up and challenged him to show his song. With a smirk, he gestured for the music to begin. With the help of supporters, a decision was made to start writing another story alongside this one, with at least 2 chapters released each week for both. The idea is exciting and will provide a refreshing change. This new story will also feature Izuku and 𝗬𝗏, with Momo and Kyoka traveling with him. They will be born in a Pokemon world, adding a unique twist to the adventure. The first part of the story was published after reaching 1,000 reads, marking a significant milestone. The girl captivates Izuku's thoughts, her presence lingering in his mind. Despite knowing she may not be the best choice, he finds himself drawn to her. She brings both highs and lows, leaving him in a state of confusion. He struggles with the idea of wanting something more than a fleeting connection, wishing for a deeper bond, but sensing that she is not ready for that level of commitment. As he reflects on their encounters, he realizes that while she may not fit the mold of his ideal partner, there is something about her that he cannot resist. The push and pull of their relationship keeps him engaged, even if it leads to uncertainty. Everyone started cheering loudly, expressing their excitement. The protagonist grabbed the microphone and tapped it a few times, calming the crowd. They asked Mirko if she remembered how they first met. Mirko, handed a microphone by Nizu, admitted she didn't remember but found the protagonist familiar. The protagonist smiled and gestured for her to come closer, whispering for her to recognize their scent. After taking a sniff, Mirko exclaimed that the scent was indeed familiar. The protagonist then asked if she wanted to hear the story of their first meeting on the microphone. Mirko thought for a moment and nodded. The protagonist took the microphone and announced that everyone knew pro-heroes took days off to relax and enjoy themselves. They shared that 2 years ago, while returning home from shopping at 9 p.m., Mirko was also on holiday that day. Looking at Mirko, she suddenly recalled the memory and shouted for the protagonist not to share it, claiming it was embarrassing. The protagonist chuckled, teasing her about remembering what she had done. 𝗵𝗃 blushed and unexpectedly kissed the protagonist. The crowd erupted in surprise, shouting in disbelief. After pulling away, 𝗵𝗃 declared on the microphone that the protagonist was her mate from that day forward, and no one could change that. The protagonist, confused, turned to the crowd and asked what a mate was. Everyone, including 𝗵𝗃, shouted in astonishment that he didn't know. He tilted his head, genuinely puzzled. Momo then warned everyone not to explain what a mate was in a mock-serious tone before turning to the protagonist and announcing that 𝗵𝗃 had declared him her sixth girlfriend. The crowd reacted with excitement, asking who the other five were. The protagonist pointed to Momo, Kyoka, Shoko, Fuyumi, and Yui, and the spotlight fell on them. He simply stated, them, before turning back to 𝗵𝗃, wrapping his tail around her, and pulling her in for another kiss. His father suddenly shouted with pride, claiming him as his son. The crowd turned to him, and 𝗕𝗏𝗏, standing beside him, questioned how that was possible since the protagonist's last name was Midoriya. Endeavour took the microphone and explained that he had adopted the protagonist when he was a child, prompting an understanding murmur from the crowd. The protagonist then announced it was time for the second song and that he would pick someone from the crowd to choose the genre. Everyone waited patiently as he scanned the audience, finally selecting a girl with blonde hair and blue eyes. The spotlight fell on her as she exclaimed in surprise. The protagonist complimented her appearance, tilting his head in confusion when he heard the crowd's protective reaction to his innocence. The girl calmed down, introduced herself as Melissa Shield, and chose a hero-inspired song. The protagonist smiled, pleased with her choice, and promised to sing a song that would excite everyone. He went to his CD case, selected a song, and placed it in the CD player, inviting everyone to enjoy. Mama said it's uphill for oddities, stranger crusaders who are never wannabes. The weird and the novelties don't ever change. They wanted everything, They aimed to stay up on that rise, to never come down. Mama said not to give up, even if it's a little complicated. All tied up, with no more love, and it was hard to see anyone waiting. They said it had all been done, but they hadn't seen the best yet. So there was one more run, and it was going to be a sight to see. They had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars even when they couldn't make a killing. They didn't have a dime, but they always had a vision. They always had high hopes. They didn't know how, but they always felt they were going to be that one in a million. Everyone cheered after the song ended, clapping enthusiastically. They saw heroes joining in the applause, confirming that they had done well. It was time to pick the next person. They looked around and pointed to a girl with dark green hair, tall with a slightly lizard-like face. She grinned, stood up, and caught the microphone thrown to her. She introduced herself as Setsuna Tokage and playfully suggested a song that was flirty. Momo immediately stood up, exclaiming that the performer didn't know songs like that. They responded that they didn't mind removing their shirt, but asked if by 𝗬𝗓 she meant an ultra-flirty kind of song. The girls cheered in agreement, and they mentioned having a song in mind that observed adults flirting. They admitted to not knowing how to flirt but promised to try their best. Picking a CD, they prepared to perform. They removed their shirt and tossed it toward 𝗵𝗃, asking her to hold on to it. They noticed everyone turning red, some even appearing to bleed from their noses. Concerned, they asked if everyone was okay. Momo reassured them that it was just something else and urged them to sing. Setsuna commented on their impressive abs, to which they thanked her and joked about breaking enough iron with their muscles. Curious, everyone asked how strong they were. They calmly replied that they didn't know, having never had anyone to compare with. Then, they decided it was time to start the performance. They began singing a catchy tune, bringing a fun and lively energy to the crowd. The atmosphere was electric as everyone joined in, enjoying the moment and celebrating the spirit of the performance. The atmosphere was electric as everyone gathered, excitement palpable in the air. Amidst the crowd, one person stood out, drawing attention with their confident demeanor. They moved to the back, where the VIP section awaited, drinks flowing freely. The energy was infectious, and smiles lit up the faces around. As the music played, the crowd swayed, captivated by the rhythm. The vibe was playful, and the anticipation grew as one person took center stage, ready to showcase their talent. They asked for the next song, and the pro heroes and students exchanged glances, some feeling a mix of admiration and nervousness. One hero, known for her charm, stood up and suggested a change in pace. She wanted to avoid overwhelming the crowd with too much excitement. The performer nodded, understanding the need for balance. However, when the topic of heartbreak arose, emotions shifted. Tears welled up as they spoke about a past relationship, the weight of memories heavy in the air. Friends rushed to offer support, surrounding the performer with warmth and encouragement. They took a seat, ready to share their feelings through song, knowing that the comfort of companionship would help them through the moment. As the music began, the lyrics poured out, a story of love and loss unfolding. The crowd listened intently, feeling the depth of the emotions expressed. Each note resonated, a reminder of the complexities of relationships and the journey of healing. The performance was powerful, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present, a testament to the strength found in vulnerability. Having traveled the world, language barriers didn't matter, but the allure of a captivating presence needed no explanation. All that truly mattered was understanding the connection when someone spoke intimately. Izuku noticed the girls around him, their eyes sparkling with admiration. He wondered if he had been too charming. Suddenly, 𝗎𝗠 approached him and requested the microphone. After passing it over, 𝗎𝗠 announced that while everyone had enjoyed the concert, it was time for a little challenge. Excitement buzzed through the crowd, even among the professionals. 𝗎𝗠 declared that any girl who could touch Midoriya within 2 hours would earn the chance to spend a week with him. Izuku was taken aback but quickly shifted into high gear, disappearing from sight. He could hear shouts from the hall urging others to catch him, but he had already found refuge among the trees. He called 𝗎𝗠 on his phone to clarify the rules, asking if he was only allowed to run within the school grounds. 𝗎𝗠 confirmed that he was restricted to the school borders since he didn't have permission to use his quirk outside. Izuku then inquired about the time limit, learning he had until 12:30 p.m. It was time to blend in like a ninja. An hour passed, and he had seen at least 100 girls and heroes searching for him. He pondered what he might gain if he won this challenge. Just then he noticed Mina scanning the area and quickly decided to hide in a bush that matched his hair color, exposing just a hint of it to avoid detection. With only 20 minutes left, he felt a hand on his shoulder and heard a sweet female voice declare that she had caught him. Turning around, he saw Ryukyu, the dragon hero. He sighed, admitting he had been so close. She playfully petted his ears, which he found comforting. An announcement echoed through the area, declaring that Ryukyu had won the challenge and could visit Izuku's room at night for a week. Turning to her, he expressed that having a pro hero as a dorm mate for a week was unexpected. She replied with a smile, mentioning she now had a personal live radio to enjoy. They both laughed, and Ryukyu suggested they grab some food since she needed to head to her station later, and he had a quirk assessment with Class 1B in the afternoon. As they walked to the cafeteria, Ryukyu paused and proposed an interesting challenge. If she could make him fall in love with her during the week, she would become his 7th girlfriend. Izuku smiled, agreeing to go on a few dates. She mentioned her luck in taking a leave that week to assist at UA, allowing them to spend time together. He felt a thrill of excitement, never expecting someone as appealing as Ryukyu would be interested in him, especially after Mirko had declared herself his 6th girlfriend. After enjoying their lunch, Ryukyu shared her number with him, reminding him it was time to head to class and wait for his homeroom teacher. He nodded, waved goodbye, and made his way to class. Upon entering, he noticed everyone was chatting, but all eyes turned to him. They greeted him and asked where he had hidden. He recounted his hiding spot, mentioning how Mina had passed him multiple times, which made her pout adorably. He responded with a tail hug, brightening her mood. Next, he approached Shoko, asking if she was still upset with him. She tackled him to the ground, kissing him and apologizing repeatedly. They both got up, and he pointed to the large sleeping bag in the corner, explaining that it belonged to the pro hero Eraserhead. Eraserhead stood up and remarked that it had been years since anyone had spotted him on their first day. Izuku quipped that it was hard to ignore a yellow human caterpillar. Eraserhead then pulled out 20 outfits from the bag, instructing everyone to wear gym clothes and meet him outside. The class responded eagerly. After 10 minutes, everyone gathered outside with Class 1B, which was predominantly female. Izuku waved to Kendo, Ibra, and Yui, who smiled back. Aizawa tossed a ball to Izuku, asking him to share his middle school ball throw score since he had scored the highest in the practicals. Izuku replied that he had thrown it 200 meters. The class gasped in disbelief that he had done so without using his quirk. He explained that being half-fox gave him higher basic stats than others. Activating his lightning mode, he threw the ball with all his strength, breaking the sound barrier. The shockwave sent everyone stumbling back. Aizawa checked the machine, announcing a distance of 30 kilometers. The class was in awe, and Izuku thought about how he could strategize if given another chance. Then Aizawa added that the last student to finish among the 40 would be expelled. Complaints erupted among the students, but Izuku reminded them that life, disasters, villain attacks, and the treatment of quirkless individuals were all unfair. They were there to learn how to combat such injustices, not to complain. The class fell silent, and Aizawa thanked Izuku for his words, which made him smile. The first test was the 50-meter dash. Izuku was paired up with Ida and activated his lightning mode. As soon as Aizawa announced the start of the race, he completed it in just 0.45 seconds, while Ida finished in 3.2 seconds. Ida remarked that he could only reach third gear over short distances. Time skipped to the results, and Aizawa stated that he didn't want to announce individual rankings, so he provided the average scores instead. The rankings were as follows. 1. Izuku Midoriya 2. Momo Yaoyorozu 3. Shoko Todoroki 4. Fuyumi Todoroki 5. Shojino Mizo 6. Katsuki Bakogu 7. Kyoka 8. Itsuka Kendo 9. Ibra Shiozaki 10. Yui Kodai 40. Minoru Mineta began to scream but stopped when Aizawa mentioned that the expelled part was a lie. Everyone except the top 4 started to complain, but Momo quickly interjected, apologizing for not clarifying that it was a joke. Izuku then explained that it wasn't entirely a lie. Aizawa had expelled a whole class the previous year due to a lack of potential, but he had seen potential in all of them this time and chose to downplay it. Everyone's eyes widened at this revelation. Aizawa concluded the day, stating that main classes would start the next day and that they were free to do as they pleased until curfew at 10 p.m. By 4:30 p.m., Izuku had changed back into his UA uniform and arrived at his dorm. Upon entering, he found Ryukyu sitting on his bed in casual clothes, humming to herself. He complimented her on her lovely voice, suggesting they could sing together sometime. She blushed but smiled, saying that he was making her fall for him even more. Izuku smiled back, unsure how he was doing it but enjoying the moment. Ryukyu then stood up, announcing that she would wait for him in the common room and encouraging him to change for their first hangout. After changing into a blue t-shirt and dark blue jeans, Izuku looked in the mirror and felt confident. He headed to the common room, announcing that he was ready for their date. However, he sensed 4 dark gazes behind him and turned to see Momo, Kyoka, Fuyumi, and Shoko smiling mischievously. Ryukyu hugged him from behind, playfully declaring that Izuku was hers for the week due to the challenge. His 4 girlfriends sighed, with Momo cautioning Ryukyu to keep other girls away from him. They set off for their date, starting at an arcade where they competed in various games, winning some and losing others. Izuku discovered that Ryukyu was also a talented dancer. As they walked to a nearby restaurant, he noticed her admiring a dragon necklace for a moment before continuing on. Pretending to search for his phone, he told her to wait in the restaurant while he checked the arcade. Once she was out of sight, he slipped into a jewelry shop and inquired about the necklace. The shopkeeper informed him that it cost $10. Izuku paid with his debit card and requested it to be wrapped in a small yellow case. After receiving the gift, he hurried back to the restaurant, only to find a guy trying to persuade Ryukyu to go with him. Feeling a surge of protectiveness, he approached the guy and firmly asked him to leave Ryukyu alone. The man paled and quickly departed. Izuku turned to Ryukyu, apologizing for leaving her alone. She responded with a smirk, teasingly confirming that she was indeed his girl. They placed their order and chatted about their arcade experience, sharing jokes and laughter. After enjoying their dinner, they began their walk back to UA, and it was around 8:30 p.m. Izuku took her hand and turned her to face him. Surprised by his sudden movement, she blushed and asked why he had pulled her close. He presented her gift, encouraging her to open it. When she revealed the necklace, her eyes widened in shock. She started to tear up, questioning why he had spent so much on it. He reassured her that the value of the necklace paled in comparison to the fun they had shared that day. He gently tied the necklace around her neck, and she hugged him tightly. After they broke apart, Izuku felt an overwhelming urge to kiss her. He pulled her back to him, their lips meeting in a soft kiss. Initially surprised, she soon melted into the moment. After a minute, they parted, and he expressed how she was the first to make him fall in love so quickly, feeling grateful that she had won the challenge. Blushing, she buried her face in his chest, and he chuckled, holding her close. They walked back, smiling, with his arm wrapped around her. Upon arriving at the common room, everyone looked at them in surprise, and Fuyumi teased Izuku about having a seventh girlfriend. He admitted that he couldn't help but love her and gave Ryukyu a quick peck on the lips. Kyoka playfully remarked on his boldness. Feeling inspired, Izuku turned around, removed his glasses, narrowed his eyes, and smirked. He playfully asked the girls if they wanted a kiss. Most of the girls blushed deeply, their eyes sparkling with affection. He laughed, clarifying that he was joking and that it was his first attempt at flirting, which seemed to have made an impression. Everyone chased Izuku around the campus for his joke while Katsuki and Ochako watched, enjoying popcorn. Katsuki smirked, thinking about how much fun he would have with Izuku's predicament, while Ochako agreed, and they exchanged a fist bump. After the commotion settled, the girls calmed down when Izuku promised to prepare breakfast the next day. They returned to their dorm rooms, and Izuku found Ryukyu already in her pajamas on his bed, watching Pokemon. An idea struck him. He had a secret Ninetales onesie made just for him, designed to accommodate his tails. Silently, he donned the onesie without Ryukyu noticing and got on all fours, mimicking a Ninetales while making fox sounds. Ryukyu jumped, looking around in surprise before spotting him and exclaimed that there was a Ninetales in Izuku's dorm. Everyone came running, and Bakugo slammed open the door, making Izuku internally cringe. Lita questioned why there was a real Pokemon present, and unable to contain himself, Izuku burst into laughter. Confusion spread until he removed the Ninetales face mask. Everyone's eyes widened, and Izuku declared that it was the best reaction for a prank. Lita then lectured him on pranking while everyone else laughed. After the group left and Bakugo repaired the door, Izuku jumped onto the bed, wrapping his tails around Ryukyu and pulling her close for a cuddle. He nuzzled into her neck, enjoying the warmth, and they both drifted off to sleep. At 6 a.m., the alarm rang, and Izuku quickly silenced it to avoid waking Ryukyu. He carefully wiggled out of her grasp, stretched, did some warm-ups, then took a shower and changed into his uniform. By 7:15 a.m., he finished making pancakes for everyone and rang the breakfast bell. The others came rushing down, and he placed 21 plates on the large dining table. Everyone sat down, said their prayers, and took their first bites, their faces lighting up with delight. Momo praised the pancakes, calling them 7-star quality, and everyone eagerly devoured their breakfast. By 7:30 a.m., they finished eating and headed off to classes, which started at 8:15 a.m. The first 4 PRDS were filled with regular subjects like English, math, history, and science. When the lunch bell rang, everyone left the classroom and headed to the cafeteria. They retrieved their lunches and settled into 4 separate groups. Izuku sat with his 6 girlfriends, including Ryukyu, who was assisting their class for the week. They enjoyed their lunch and relaxed until the bell rang at 1:30 p.m., signaling the end of lunch and the start of their hero class until 4 p.m. They waited in class, and Ryukyu kept the identity of their heroic teacher a secret. Suddenly, All Might burst through the door, announcing his arrival in a dramatic fashion. Izuku's sweat dropped, feeling sorry for the door, while the girls fangirled alongside Mineta. Once everyone calmed down, All Might announced that they would be doing combat training that day. Izuku felt excitement build within him as he noticed Bakugo smirking, a hint of competitive energy radiating from him. All Might then pressed a button, revealing 20 suitcases, and declared that no hero is complete without their hero costume. Izuku's excitement peaked. He had spent 2 days designing his costume, which included a pair of steel batons that could channel his lightning to paralyze opponents unless they wore full-body anti-electric suits. They took their costumes and headed to the changing rooms, which were separated by gender. After changing into his hero outfit, Izuku joined the others at the entrance to the abandoned fake city. All Might was complimenting everyone's costumes when he suddenly noticed Izuku was missing. When Izuku entered, he announced his presence, and the girls blushed at his appearance, except for Aoi, Ojura, Satora, and Tokori Red. Confused, Izuku asked why they looked flushed, and Shojino stammered that it was just hot in there. He noticed All Might and Bakugo smirking but decided to let it go, attributing it to the warmth of the room. Looking at the girls' outfits, he complimented them, and they responded with gratitude. All Might then explained the day's instructions. There would be 2 teams in each battle, with 2 members on each team. The villain team would protect a fake nuclear bomb while the hero team would either capture the villains with capture tape or secure the bomb by touching it. The villains would receive a 5-minute head start, and the teams would be formed randomly, with a time limit of 15 minutes for each battle. Everyone nodded in agreement, but Lita, clad in her full-body metallic suit, questioned why the teams were being formed randomly. Izuku placed a hand on her shoulder, explaining that working with different people would help them learn to collaborate with various quirks in the future. Lita expressed gratitude for the clarification, bowing deeply. After the lottery, All Might announced the teams and their opponents. The teams remained the same as in the original story, with Izuku paired with Lita and Bakugo teamed up with Uraraka. Instead of Mineta, Fuyumi would be joining the competition. All Might announced that the first match was between Midoriya and Lita versus Bakugo and Uraraka. The villains had a 5-minute head start to strategize. Midoriya turned to Lita and explained that since Bakugo and Uraraka were friends, Bakugo would likely be on the offense while Uraraka would be with the bomb. He instructed Lita to find the bomb while he engaged Bakugo, advising him to stay hidden and keep him updated through the earpiece. Lita, though surprised, agreed to the plan. As the 5 minutes concluded, All Might's voice echoed, signaling the heroes to begin their assault. Midoriya and Lita dashed toward the building, with Midoriya taking the lead, using his hardened tails to form a shield against any surprise attacks. Moments later, an explosion erupted from the 3rd floor, prompting Lita to nod and leave to locate the bomb. Midoriya smirked, ready to face Bakugo. Bakugo, equally eager for the fight, charged at Midoriya with a powerful right hook. Midoriya countered by channeling electricity through his baton, striking Bakugo and temporarily paralyzing him. As he quickly wrapped Bakugo in capture tape, the paralysis wore off, and Bakugo pulled the pin on his grenade, causing All Might to shout a warning about the danger of a point-blank explosion. Bakugo, however, was confident that Midoriya could dodge it and activated his lightning mode, sprinting away just in time. Midoriya felt the building tremble and thought that now was his chance to sneak up on Bakugo. He dashed back, finding Bakugo in a state of panic, believing he had caused Midoriya's demise. From Bakugo's perspective, he was overwhelmed with guilt, convinced he had killed Midoriya. Everything went black as he felt a sudden impact on his neck. Returning to Midoriya's perspective, he realized Bakugo was knocked out and seized the opportunity to capture him before assisting Lita. He heard Lita's voice through the earpiece, informing him that she was hiding outside the room while Uraraka guarded the bomb with her quirk. Midoriya, intrigued by the mention of metallic objects, rushed to Lita, who was startled by his sudden appearance. He quickly placed a hand over her mouth to keep her quiet and whispered his plan to distract Uraraka with lightning while Lita captured the bomb. She nodded in agreement. Midoriya positioned himself in front of Uraraka and greeted her. She was surprised that he had gotten past Bakugo but warned him that any movement would trigger the debris around her. Midoriya smirked and sent a small jolt of electricity her way, paralyzing her momentarily. In that instant he saw a white figure dart past him, touching the bomb and declaring it captured. Uraraka, though disappointed, acknowledged the match's outcome. Midoriya complimented her strategy, and they heard All Might announce that the hero team had won. He approached Bakugo, who was still in a captured state, and noticed tears in his eyes. Midoriya removed the tape, and Bakugo, shocked, embraced him tightly, expressing his relief that he hadn't truly harmed him. Midoriya reassured Bakugo that it would take more than that to get rid of him, and they shared a fist bump before returning to the viewing room. Their classmates praised their performance, and All Might asked who they thought should be the MVP. Momo raised her hand and stated that both Izuku and 𝗧𝗏 deserved the title for their quick planning and execution. All Might confirmed her assessment. Suddenly, Midoriya found himself unexpectedly kissed by Kirishima. Caught off guard, he accepted the moment, realizing the support from his friends. Kirishima playfully hit his chest, expressing her concern over his safety during the match. Understanding her feelings, Midoriya apologized for causing her distress and asked how he could make it up to her. She smiled and requested that he never let her go and love her forever, sealing her words with another kiss. Midoriya felt a surge of happiness at her confession, recalling the moment he saved her during the entrance exam. He sat down in a nearby chair, content to stay close to her as the matches continued. He cheered for his classmates, congratulating the winners and encouraging those who lost. Afterward, he returned to his dorm, surprised to find it significantly larger than before, with a bed that could accommodate many people. He immediately called Principal Nizu to inquire about the changes. Nizu explained that due to a new law allowing males with quirks to marry multiple partners, accommodations had been adjusted accordingly. Since there were already 8 girlfriends, it was decided that everyone would share one room. If the number increased to 15, a new separate dorm would be provided for the harem. This information was shared with the girls, along with Mirko, Ryukyu, and Yui Kodai, who would also be living with him from now on. He was instructed to take care of them, and the call abruptly ended, leaving him in shock. He then heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Yui, Mirko, Ryukyu, Momo, Kyoka, Shoko, Fuyumi, and Ijira, along with Ibra and Kendo. Confused, he asked why Kendo and Ibra were there, as he hadn't proposed to them. Yui stepped forward and explained that since Yue had started, he hadn't spent much time with her. She revealed that Ibra and Kendo had confessed their feelings for him, and she had encouraged them to be part of his growing circle of girlfriends. He was taken aback and realized he couldn't argue about not spending time with Yui. The girls smirked and playfully declared that he had no say in the matter. Sighing, he acknowledged his lack of control in the situation but smiled, recognizing the strong-willed girls around him. Suddenly, Kendo and Ijira tackled him onto the bed, and soon everyone joined in, creating a cozy pile. As he extended his tails, Kendo and Ijira hugged his hands, while the others snuggled close. He thought to himself that this wasn't so bad, and they all cuddled together, drifting off to a peaceful sleep. The next morning, they woke up at 7 a.m., got ready, had breakfast, and hurried to homeroom, eager to avoid being late for Aizawa's class. Once they arrived, they waited for Aizawa, who entered and announced that they would be choosing a class representative. The students sighed in relief and began nominating themselves. However, when Mineta suggested he should be president and that girls' skirt sizes should be cut in half, he quickly took action and threw Mineta out of the window. Aizawa commended him for the swift decision and instructed everyone to vote for the president, handing out pieces of paper. After the votes were counted, Aizawa revealed the results. Izuku Midoriya received 19 votes, while Momo Yaoyorozu received. He smiled and stepped to the front alongside Momo, expressing gratitude for the trust placed in him as class president, promising he would never let them down. Momo echoed his sentiments but was curious about who had voted for her. He admitted that he had, believing she would be a great fit due to her calm, collected, and intelligent nature. Momo blushed at the compliment, feeling touched by his words. Izuku found himself reflecting on the day's events. He had been selected as class president, and to his surprise, all his female classmates would be living in the same large dorm room with him. It was 5 a.m., and he knew it was time to wake up, train, and prepare breakfast. After changing into his training outfit, he ran around the college for 30 minutes before heading to the gym. He spent the next hour practicing his martial arts on the training dummies and punching bags, followed by some weightlifting until 7:30 a.m. Once finished, he returned to the dormitory, took a shower, and changed into his school uniform. By 8 a.m., he had finished breakfast and set the table for his classmates before heading to class to research other heroes. As the class began, they chatted until the bell rang, and Aizawa entered the room. He announced that for their heroic class, they would be going to 𝗕𝗏 for rescue training, accompanied by 2 other teachers. He held up a card with rescue written in bold letters and instructed everyone to change into their gym clothes or hero costumes. The day continued as usual until lunch. Izuku, along with Momo, Fuyumi, Kyoka, Shoko, and Ijira, met up with Kendo, Yui, and Iber to grab their lunches. They found a large empty table and began chatting while sampling each other's food. Suddenly an alarm blared, announcing a level 3 security breach and instructing everyone to evacuate the building in an orderly manner. Panic ensued as students pushed toward the exits. Izuku was shoved toward a window and saw that the media had somehow broken in. He shouted that it was just the media, but his words went unheard. Frustrated at seeing his classmates in distress, he approached Momo and asked her to quickly make him a microphone. She complied, and he surrounded himself with blue flames before taking to the air, drawing everyone's attention. Once he had their focus, he spoke into the microphone, urging everyone to remain calm and assuring them that there was no threat, only the media. Gradually, the students calmed down and returned to their classes, complimenting Izuku for his quick thinking. They donned their hero costumes and made their way to the buses, where Aizawa awaited them. Izuku encouraged everyone to sit with whoever they wanted as they boarded the bus heading to 𝐒𝐻𝐁𝐵. On the bus, he sat between Ijira and 𝗬𝗓𝗏, who introduced herself and asked him to call her Tsu. Izuku smiled and agreed, and they chatted about their quirks. Ijira remarked on how powerful Izuku's quirk was compared to her own, which only allowed her to harden her body. Izuku reassured her that her quirk was impressive and offered to train with her after the rescue training. Upon arriving at USJ, they were greeted by the space hero 13, who welcomed them and explained the facility's purpose: to train students in disaster rescue scenarios. As they entered, they marveled at the size of the place. Izuku sensed something was off when Ijira pointed out the fake villains in the center. They turned to see a male with blue hair and several female villains surrounding him. Aizawa instructed everyone to stick together and protect the students. Understanding the seriousness of the situation, Izuku shouted for everyone to run to the exit, but a black mist formed in front of it, and a villain emerged, announcing their intention to attack the students. Katsuki and Ijira rushed forward, but most of the class was suddenly teleported away, leaving only a few behind. Izuku found himself free-falling through the air before quickly summoning blue flames to fly. He realized he had been transported to the shipwreck zone, where he spotted Tsuyu and Mineta on a ship. An idea struck him, and he whispered to them that the villains were unaware of their quirks. He instructed them to jump to the shore when he yelled, "Now," and for Mineta to use his sticky ball. As he ascended into the sky, a villain warned the others about his actions. When he shouted, "Now," Tsuyu leaped across the water, using her tongue to grab Mineta, who began throwing his sticky ball. The villains became ensnared, and Izuku summoned lightning that spread across the water, incapacitating the villains with a powerful shock. The protagonist took some capture tape from their costume pocket, and with the help of Tsu and Mineta, they gathered the villains and tied them up tightly to prevent them from using their quirks. The protagonist instructed Tsu and Mineta to head to the exit and wait for everyone to gather there. They both nodded and ran toward the exit while the protagonist made their way to the center to assist Aizawa. Upon arrival, they saw Aizawa pinned down by a strange bird-like creature. The creature appeared to be overpowering Aizawa, and anger surged within the protagonist. They activated lightning mode, moving with incredible speed to punch the Nomu, sending it staggering back. Seizing the opportunity, the protagonist swiftly picked up Aizawa and reached the exit in an instant, handing Aizawa over to Shojino and instructing her to bandage him while they dealt with the villains. Shojino was about to respond, but the protagonist firmly insisted on no arguments and returned to confront the villains. They unleashed a massive lightning bolt that incapacitated all but the man with hands, the woman shrouded in mist, and the bird creature. The man with hands expressed disbelief at how easily the protagonist had defeated the others, accusing them of cheating and commanding the 𝗏𝗵𝗲 to finish the fight. The 𝗏𝗵𝗲 lunged to attack, but the protagonist dodged effortlessly, using their tails to grab its hands and delivering powerful punches while in lightning mode. To their shock, the 𝗏𝗵𝗲 began to regenerate from the blows. The man with hands laughed, revealing that the 𝗏𝗏𝗲 had been enhanced with super strength, shock resistance, and instant regeneration. A clever idea sparked in the protagonist's mind, and they smirked, realizing they could exploit this information. They seized the 𝗏𝗏𝗲's exposed brain and unleashed a surge of high-voltage lightning combined with dark blue flames. The 𝗏𝗏𝗲 screamed in agony, and the protagonist maintained the assault for a full minute at maximum power until the creature collapsed, reduced to ashes. Cheers erupted from their classmates, and the protagonist noticed the man with hands scratching his head in disbelief, questioning how this was possible. The protagonist explained that by destroying the cells with high-voltage lightning and burning the body with flames reaching temperatures of 3,000 degrees, they had rendered the 𝗏𝗏𝗲 powerless. Just as they began to feel faint, they witnessed the man with hands being shot in the legs and arms before vanishing. The protagonist heard their classmates calling their name and then succumbed to unconsciousness, cradled in strong arms. All Might's perspective shifted as he caught young Midoriya before he hit the ground. He quickly retrieved some stamina candies from Recovery Girl and placed them in Midoriya's mouth while carrying him to the exit. All around USJ, the police were arresting villains, and a detective approached All Might after interrogating the students. The detective informed him that they should be grateful to Midoriya, as he had defeated the artificial human that the captured villains claimed was designed to kill All Might. Shocked by this revelation, All Might requested a copy of the video for further discussion with the faculty, receiving a USB drive to keep in his pocket. He then sensed movement from young Midoriya. Midoriya awoke to find himself in All Might's arms, confused about what had happened. Remembering that he had defeated the main villain, he thanked All Might for the lift. Suddenly he was enveloped by his classmates, who hugged him tightly and expressed their relief. He reassured them that he was uninjured, just tired from using his full power of flames and lightning. Grateful that he hadn't needed to use dual element mode, he kept that secret for future challenges. As they were skirted to the dorms, Shoko and Momo clung to him, showering him with compliments. The door burst open, and Kendo, Mirko, Ryukyu, Ibra, and Yui rushed in, tackling him to the ground once more. They were in tears, and Yui scolded him for worrying them during the attack. Midoriya felt a pang of guilt, realizing his actions might have unintentionally hurt those who cared for him. He apologized, explaining that his anger had taken over when he saw Aizawa in danger. They all stood up, and Satomi and Aoi prepared dinner, which they enjoyed together before heading to their rooms for the night. The next morning, Midoriya awoke at 7:30 a.m., feeling utterly exhausted. He remembered that UA had been granted a 3-day break to enhance security, so he tried to return to sleep. However, he was pulled from his bed by Kendo, Ibra, and Mirko, who insisted it was time for their date. He groaned, expressing his fatigue and longing to rest, but Ibra insisted he had to take them out the following day. Reluctantly, he agreed and settled back into bed. In his mindscape, he wandered through an abyss until he heard a loud sound resembling a fox. Following the noise, he encountered a massive white fox, towering at 20 feet with 9 tails and electricity coursing through its form. Curiosity piqued, he asked who the creature was. It came to her face, and she revealed that her name was Winter and that she had saved him by giving herself to him when he was a baby, allowing him to live. He was shocked by this revelation and immediately hugged Winter, expressing gratitude for her sacrifice, saying it was because of her that he had a quirk and had met amazing people. She then transformed into her human form, and he was mesmerized by her beauty, with her snow-white hair, sky-blue tails with white ends, and captivating blue eyes. Winter then kissed him gently and acknowledged his hard work in saving others, mentioning that she had witnessed all of his kindness. She explained that it was because of his dedication to training that she could take form and be summoned as part of his quirk. Stunned yet smiling, he expressed his love for Winter and hoped they would work well together. He then woke up from his dream. In reality, he opened his eyes to find Winter cuddling next to him, their tails interlocked. He asked her if she had any offensive abilities, to which Winter replied that she could transform into her fox form to rescue people and assist him in battles if necessary. She mentioned her super strength and super speed, assuring him that she could support him. He smiled and promised not to send her back to the mindscape but to keep her by his side, only using the mindscape when it was dangerous or when she was hurt. Winter hugged him and kissed him again. With his hands around her waist and her arms around his neck, they playfully engaged in a gentle contest of demps with their tongues. Suddenly, they were interrupted by Momo, who yelled in surprise at Izuku for not asking for permission. He quickly transformed into his small fox form and hid behind Winter as she explained that she was the reason he was alive and part of his quirk. The girls, initially angry, apologized and accepted Winter. Mirko happily chatted with her. Izuku then noticed Momo approaching him. He changed back to his human form, lowering his head and ears, aware of her anger. To his surprise, she hugged him and apologized for yelling without knowing the full story. Shocked, he hugged her back and extended his tails to include the others in the embrace. After a few minutes, they broke the hug and went to eat lunch since he had slept through breakfast. After lunch, they relaxed by watching movies, playing video games, listening to music, and enjoying card games until dinner. He cooked ramen for dinner, and everyone ate happily, which brought a smile to his face. They then went to their dorms, and he fell asleep, used as a body pillow for 11 girls. The next morning, he woke up to find himself cuddled by all his girls. Smiling, he checked the time. It was 6 a.m., meaning he had 5 hours until his date with Ibara, Kendo, Tajura, Mirko, and Winter. He carefully got out of bed, placing them in each other's embrace. After putting on his training gear and stretching, he reflected on his fight with the Nomo. He thought about his quirk, realizing that even though he could use dual element mode for an hour, he could only maintain both elements at full power for a few minutes. He needed to increase his quirk capacity and endurance, planning to focus on using his full power with both hands while running around the field. He decided to start with the basics and gradually increase his training time by 5 minutes each day. He began with stretches and then jogged for 30 minutes at a brisk pace. After jogging, he went to the gym to lift heavy weights and build more physical strength, knowing that the stronger he became, the more powerful his lightning mode and dual element mode would be. He completed several sets of bench presses and chest presses with 200 kilograms each. After weightlifting, he moved on to martial arts training with the training dummies. By the time he finished, it was 8:20 a.m. After returning to the dorms, the narrator noticed Momo and Fuyumi cooking. They mentioned their intention to take a bath before breakfast, to which both girls agreed. The narrator headed to their room, changed clothes, and took a shower. Once refreshed, the narrator joined everyone at the breakfast table, where lively conversations filled the air. They spotted an empty seat next to Mina and enjoyed their meal. By 9 a.m., the narrator decided to visit Bakugu's room. After knocking, Bakugu opened the door and greeted the narrator. The narrator expressed a longing to play some one-on-one games, and Bakugu smirked, allowing them inside. They spent the next hour intensely competing, with the narrator winning the final match. With a triumphant fist raised, the narrator declared their victory, noting the final score of 12 to Bakugu tossed the controller onto the bed, vowing to win next time. The narrator glanced at the time and mentioned needing to leave for a date. Before departing, they asked Bakugu if he had confessed to Uraraka yet. Bakugu sighed, revealing he wanted to plan something special for his confession. The narrator offered to help later and left the room. Back in their own room, the narrator selected some stylish clothes and changed, admiring their reflection and thinking about the upcoming movie and boat ride. After getting ready, they headed downstairs to find their dates waiting at the entrance. The narrator complimented them on their appearance, and after sharing a quick kiss with each, they set off for the mall. At the bus station, they boarded a bus heading to the mega mall. After a 30-minute ride, they arrived, and Ibara suggested everyone choose one store to shop at together. The narrator already had a destination in mind, KFC, craving the delicious chicken. While everyone contemplated their choices, Ibara mentioned wanting to visit a nearby flower garden in the evening, as she had no shopping needs. Ijira expressed interest in buying sports tops and leg weights, while Kendo mentioned needing riding gloves. The narrator enthusiastically noted their shared love for motorcycles, which made Kendo smile. 𝗵𝗲 then suggested hitting the arcade before lunch, and everyone agreed. Winter simply wanted some casual clothes. They first visited the ladies' clothing store, where Winter picked out several dresses and undergarments. Next, they moved to the sportswear section, where 𝐒𝐳𝐻𝑖RA got her leg weights and sports tops, while Kendo found her riding gloves. The narrator also bought some cool wristbands. At 12:10 p.m., they decided to head to the arcade. Kendo and 𝗎𝐳𝐻𝑖RA competed in racing games while 𝗓𝗏 attempted to win a green fox plushie but ended up pouting in disappointment. The narrator, wanting to cheer her up, hugged her from behind and offered to try their luck. After successfully retrieving the plushie, 𝗓𝗏 hugged it tightly and shared a kiss with the narrator in gratitude. Rumi then approached, suggesting they challenge the dual dance beat machine to see if they could beat the record. The narrator, knowing Rumi was an excellent dancer, eagerly agreed. They inserted their coins, and as the screen lit up with dance moves, they moved in perfect sync, not missing a single beat. Their performance earned them a perfect high score, drawing applause from a small crowd that had gathered. Afterward, they waved to the audience and stepped off the machine. 𝗵𝗲 then approached the narrator and shared a kiss, which was reciprocated. Once they separated, the narrator noticed 𝗓𝗏 holding her plushie and saw Kendo and 𝗎𝐳𝐻𝑖RA approaching, with 𝗎𝐳𝐻𝑖RA looking defeated. The narrator guessed that 𝗎𝐳𝐻𝑖RA hadn't won any games, and Kendo confirmed it. The narrator comforted 𝗎𝐳𝐻𝑖RA with a kiss, assuring her that she could seek revenge later. She smiled and hugged the narrator, while Kendo and Winter playfully pouted, prompting the narrator to give them each a kiss before they headed to KFC for lunch. They ordered buckets of chicken, burgers, and fries. After enjoying their meal, they decided to visit the aquarium since it was only 3 p.m. Upon arrival, the narrator noticed that the fish seemed to swim away whenever they approached a window, leading to a playful pout. 𝗵𝗲 hugged the narrator, complimenting their fox ears, and the narrator affectionately petted her ears. At the dolphin exhibit, the dolphins appeared to take a liking to the narrator, allowing them to pet almost all of them. By the time they left the aquarium, it was 5:30 p.m. Once outside, the narrator announced it was time to head to the flower garden. Everyone agreed, and they made their way there, arriving at 6 p.m. The beauty of the flowers captivated everyone, and 𝗓𝗏, kneeling among them, had her vines bloom with flowers as well. The narrator couldn't help but admire her beauty, capturing the moment with a photo on their phone. As the sun began to set, the sky was filled with an appealing orange light, surrounded by blooming flowers. The group made their way back to the dorms, arriving at 7:30 p.m. The girls gathered to discuss their day, while the narrator and Bakugo playfully tied Mineta to a pillar, brainstorming potential team combos for future challenges. Eventually, everyone gathered at the dinner table, where the narrator and Katsuki had prepared soba for the group. Shoko's eyes sparkled with delight as she took in the meal. After everyone said their prayers, they began to eat, sharing compliments about the delicious soba. Shoko savored her food, lost in bliss. As the meal concluded, most of the group headed off to bed, leaving only the narrator and Shoko at the table. The narrator had a sudden idea and approached Shoko, who looked puzzled as she took a mouthful of soba. In a playful moment, the narrator leaned in, surprising her, and they shared a brief, innocent kiss, followed by a light-hearted comment about the meal being delicious with extra flavor. Shoko blushed deeply, struggling to find her words as the narrator chuckled softly. She stood up and hugged him, burying her face in his chest, expressing her embarrassment. The narrator teased her gently, reminding her of their earlier moments together. They then cleaned up the dishes and returned to their room, finding everyone else asleep, intertwined in each other's embrace. The narrator chuckled and pulled out a mattress from the closet, suggesting they cuddle like they used to. Shoko smiled, and they settled down together. The next morning, the narrator woke up to the same cozy sight, Shoko beside him and the others still asleep on the bed. He carefully got up without disturbing her, glancing at the clock which read 5:30 a.m. After changing into his training clothes, he resumed his training schedule from the previous day. By 7:30 a.m., he returned to the kitchen, where Kyoka, Momo, and Winter were cooking, with Winter trying to learn the ropes. The narrator wrapped his tails around them in a friendly embrace, greeting them cheerfully. They returned his greetings with smiles and light pecks on the cheek. The narrator then suggested a nostalgic outing with Yui, Shoko, and Fuyumi, which Momo enthusiastically agreed to, while Kyoka nodded in agreement. He asked them to be ready by 11 a.m., as he wanted to spend some time with Ryukyu. After they left to inform the others, he set the breakfast on the table. As breakfast began, he sat between Tsuyu and Mina, discussing their quirks. By 8:20 a.m., everyone dispersed to enjoy their final relaxation day after 𝐒𝐻. The narrator found Ryukyu on the balcony, smiling as she admired her necklace. He approached her from behind, wrapping his arms around her gently and asking about her day. She giggled and turned to face him, wrapping her arms around his neck and mentioning the gift he had given her. Remembering a song he had written for her before 𝐒𝐻, he announced he had a surprise. Ryukyu looked curious as he instructed her to close her eyes. He wrapped a cloth around her eyes and messaged their classmates to gather in the common room for the surprise. Once everyone confirmed they would come, he led Ryukyu down the stairs and into the common room, where everyone was already seated. He removed the cloth and told her to wait while he fetched something. After retrieving his guitar and music speakers, he returned to a surprised audience. He explained that Ryukyu would be busy after today, only able to spend time with them during sleepovers. He had written a song for her, which he believed suited her perfectly. As he looked at Mirko, he noticed her blushing and avoiding eye contact. With a CD ready, he placed it in the speakers and pressed play. The recorded instruments began to play, and he picked up his guitar, starting to sing, sharing a heartfelt moment with everyone present. Psychopathic, don't be so dramatic. They had magic, but it turned tragic. Now you're manic, honestly, it's exhausting. It's time to listen to yourself, you might need some help. You tell all your friends that I'm crazy and that I drive you mad. You claim I'm a stalker, a watcher, a psychopath. Then you say you hate me and that you dated me just for laughs. So why do you call me and say you want me back? You maniac. The atmosphere was charged as emotions were released, and the audience remained silent before slowly clapping. After wiping a few stray tears, it was announced that the girls could return. Then, the microphone was taken, and it was declared that it was time for the last song of the surprise concert. The choice was made. Katsuki would perform. He grinned, standing up and saying that many had fallen for the performance, and now he would pick an even sexier song for Izuku. The crowd eagerly awaited a response. Izuku pondered, admitting that while there weren't any recorded flirty songs, a new one had been completed just the day before. The crowd erupted in cheers. Among them, Nizu wore a mischievous smirk, leaving Izuku puzzled. Picking up the guitar, Izuku narrowed his eyes and smirked flirtatiously, dedicating the song to Midnight with a wink. The audience cheered, marveling at how someone could be both cute and hot at the same time. As the music began, the energy surged. The song was lively and captivating, drawing everyone into its rhythm. The crowd moved to the beat, and Ryukyu blushed while others danced slowly. Izuku approached Ryukyu, and they began to dance together, lost in the moment. The lyrics spoke of timeless romance and classic charm, resonating with everyone present. Momo, Kyoka, Fuyumi, Shoko, and Mirko smiled, reminiscing about when Izuku had sung to them. Meanwhile, Yui, Kendo, 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗏, and Winter wondered if Izuku had written songs for them too. The atmosphere was filled with nostalgia and excitement as the performance continued, each note echoing the feelings of the crowd. The night was a celebration of friendship, love, and the magic of music. Out of my league, old school chic, like a movie star from the silver screen, one of a kind living in a world gone plastic. She was so classic, so timeless. She was class and captivating, unlike anyone he had ever met. A star from the 40s, a centerfold from the 50s, she had him feeling like he was in the 60s, surrounded by the free-spirited vibe of the hippies. She was the queen of the discotheque, a dream from the 70s and the best of the 80s. With the grace of Hepburn, the power of Beyoncé, and the allure of Marilyn Monroe, she was truly timeless. He felt overwhelmed, thinking he was born in the wrong era. He longed to rewind time, embracing the nostalgia of a bygone age. After the song ended, Izuku gazed into Ryukyu's eyes, and they leaned in, sharing a brief moment of connection. He smiled and offered his support, saying that whenever she felt stressed or needed relief, she could come to him, and he would sing for her all night if she wished. He hugged her gently as the crowd cheered and clapped. Noticing the time, he reminded everyone that they had only an hour left to prepare for their outing. Izuku went to his room to get ready, choosing a suit for their visit to a nice restaurant followed by karaoke at Kyoka's father's establishment, and then watching the sunset at the beach. He looked in the mirror, satisfied with how he looked. As he made his way downstairs, he saw Momo in a lovely green dress with her hair elegantly styled. Kyoka wore a appealing black dress with white transparent sleeves adorned with small blue flower patterns. Fuyumi was in the same dress she wore on their first date, looking like a goddess. Shoko wore a black one-piece with white highlights at the bottom, and Yui shone brightly in a sky blue sundress. He smiled, complimenting each of them on their beauty, making them blush gently. He shared a loving kiss with each girl, and Momo remarked on how handsome he looked, earning nods of agreement from the others. They stepped outside to Momo's limo, where the driver was given the location of the restaurant, 2 hours away. As they settled in, they began reminiscing about their year apart. After 2 hours, they arrived at the grand restaurant and checked in with the waiter, who guided them to their reserved table. They ordered food and drinks, with the girls complimenting each other's dresses while he smiled, appreciating how wonderful his life had become. When their food arrived, they savored each bite, discussing the flavors, and after finishing, they split the bill, even though he had wanted to pay. Once they left the restaurant, they returned to the car to head to Kyoka's karaoke venue. The receptionist recognized Kyoka immediately and led them to a private suite where they began selecting songs. The girls sang in pairs, and he was paired with Yui. There was even a scoreboard for competition. Momo and Kyoka scored 85 out of 100, while Fuyumi and Shoko scored it was their turn next, and he chose a song they both knew. Standing beside each other, he pressed start. As the music began, he noticed Yui seemed a bit nervous, so he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and started singing first. They looked at their score after singing and received a 93 out of the excitement was palpable, and one of them picked up Yui and spun her around joyfully before stopping to share a passionate kiss, which she eagerly returned. After separating, they approached Kyoka to express gratitude for the reservation, noting how much everyone enjoyed the session that day. Kyoka smiled as they checked the time. It was 5:30 p.m. when they got into the car and instructed the driver to head to Dagoba Municipal Beach, a place that had been cleaned up for their enjoyment. By the time they arrived at 6:30 p.m., they stepped onto the warm sand, barefoot, and admired the stunning sunset reflected in the water. Fuyumi remarked that if it weren't for Izuku, they might not have witnessed such an amazing view, praising his efforts. He then pulled her into an embrace and shared another passionate kiss, which she reciprocated. After parting, he acknowledged that it was Fuyumi's idea for the day's plan and expressed how much he enjoyed their time together. He gathered everyone into a group hug, wrapping them in his tails, and they stayed like that for a few moments before returning to the limo and heading back to the dorms. Upon reaching the dorms and saying goodbye to the driver, Momo, Kyoka, Fuyumi, Shoko, and Yui were pulled aside to discuss how the date went, while Izuku, feeling exhausted, went straight to Shojino, who was sitting on the couch. He jumped onto her, nuzzling into her neck as her arms wrapped around him like a warm blanket. He sighed contentedly, feeling that this was better than any blanket or bed. Shojino chuckled and noted that after taking 10 people on a date in 2 days and singing a song, it was no wonder he was tired. After cuddling for 30 minutes, he got up, gave Shojino a peck on the cheek, and thanked her, calling her his cuddle bear. Her face turned red as he headed to dinner, which had been prepared by Katsuki and Uraraka. They had made katsudon, which he devoured completely before returning to his room, where he fell asleep before anyone else arrived. The next morning marked the end of the break following the 𝗬𝗧𝗪 incident. It was 6 a.m. when Izuku woke up, feeling refreshed and ready to train, determined not to slack off. He transformed into a small fox to avoid disturbing the girls, then entered the bath to change into his training clothes. After warming up with some stretching and jogging, he completed 100 push-ups, 100 pull-ups, and 100 sit-ups, followed by 10 laps around the large running field. Once finished with his running, he made his way to the gym for muscle training. He tackled the bench press, lifting 200 kilograms weights for 5 sets of 40 repetitions each. After completing his bench press routine, 𝗔𝗫𝗓 and Kendo arrived, greeting him with a morning kiss before starting their own training. He continued with chest presses, lifting dumbbells, and weights before heading back to the dorm for breakfast, which was 8:10 a.m. by the time he returned. At the table, he saw Momo and 𝗵𝗲 eating breakfast, along with plates set for others. He greeted them with a morning kiss and sat beside 𝗵𝗲, enjoying his meal while she occasionally fed him, as she had a smaller appetite. After breakfast, he went into the bath to change into his uniform and met up with the girls. They made their way to class, with Ryukyu and Mirko heading off for hero work, while Yui, Kendo, and 𝗵𝗲 went to 1B and he, Jirou, Momo, 𝗔𝗓𝗓, Shoko, and Fuyumi went to their class. Upon entering, he noticed everyone chatting, and Toru and Mina came over to greet him. He took his seat while conversing with Shoko, Mina, and Toru, while Momo, Jirou, and Fuyumi sat together, chatting among themselves. 𝗔𝗓𝗓 went over to Hanta and Denka. After a few minutes, the bell rang, and Aizawa entered, looking quite worn out. Others tried to convince him that he didn't need to come in with such visible injuries, but he shrugged off their concerns and instructed everyone to sit down. Once everyone settled, Aizawa announced that their fight was not over, causing a wave of panic as they feared more villains were on the way. However, he quickly clarified that they would be conducting a sports festival in 1 month, and to prepare for it, they would have the afternoon off after. The room erupted in cheers, but Denka raised a concern about the timing of such an important event so soon after the villain attack. Aizawa reassured them that security would be maximized, with pro-heroes in attendance, emphasizing that you would not back down after the attack. The students relaxed and resumed their regular class schedule. After several PRDS, it was finally lunchtime. Izuku headed toward the door while everyone discussed their training plans. He already knew what he wanted to do and was considering a concert for the sports festival, provided Nizu approved it. When he opened the door, he was met with a large crowd outside. Katsuki commented that they were likely there to check them out since they had survived a villain attack. Izuku smiled politely and asked the girls to make way so they could have lunch and go train. Many girls blushed, and suddenly a sleep-deprived girl with purple hair stepped forward, confirming that they had indeed come to take a look. It seemed that all the students present were humble about their status, having survived a villain attack. One student expressed that surviving such a situation was no easy feat. Many had come close to death. They emphasized that being praised for surviving did not equate to luck, as most were still grappling with the trauma of their near-death experiences. This serious tone prompted many students to reflect on the gravity of their situation. The girl with purple hair then stated that several of them had not made it into the hero course due to their quirks not being battle-oriented, leaving them in general studies and other courses. For them, this was an opportunity to prove themselves and earn their places in the hero course, declaring it a challenge. The speaker chuckled lightly and proposed a little test for those who had declared war. The students looked puzzled as he explained that villains often exuded a sense of dread during battles, instilling fear in their opponents. He then announced his intention to emit an average level of the fearsome aura they had encountered during their fight at the 𝐒𝐻, challenging them to stand their ground instead of fleeing. The girls responded with determination. With narrowed eyes and a serious demeanor, he began to release his aura. He observed most of the students from other courses fall to their knees or flee, while a few remained, sweating but resolute. Only about 20 to 24 students stood firm. He remarked that this was the kind of pressure they had faced during their battles. The remaining students appeared shocked but also smiled, with the purple-haired girl expressing gratitude for the experience. He noticed a girl resembling a silver version of a classmate approaching him with a smile. She mentioned that she had expected his class to be filled with arrogance, but it seemed his classmates were not what she had anticipated. He smiled back and asked for her name. She introduced herself as 𝗧𝗵𝗲. He expressed his pleasure in meeting her and wished her luck in training for the upcoming sports festival. Apologizing for cutting their conversation short, he mentioned he needed to eat lunch and start his own training, asking her to say hello to their mutual friends. Turning back to his own class, he noted that they had some competition and encouraged everyone to train hard. They cheered as they headed to lunch, where he quickly ate before excusing himself to speak with Principal 𝗎𝗍. Upon knocking on the door, he heard 𝗎𝗍 invite him in. After bowing slightly, he greeted the principal and mentioned he had come to discuss something. 𝗎𝗍 smiled, revealing he had been about to call him regarding a similar topic. They both shared the idea of conducting a concert. 𝗎𝗍 asked how many original songs he could perform, and he replied that he had over 100 original songs ready, willing to sing 6, as anything more might strain his voice. 𝗎𝗍 agreed that 6 would be more than sufficient and allowed him to return to his dorm. Grateful, he made his way back and settled on the couch. When asked about his meeting with the principal, he explained he sought permission to leave campus for training, which satisfied his classmates. He then prepared for his training session, scheduled from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. His plan was to enhance his stamina and strength, as greater stamina would allow him to use his quirk longer, and increased physical strength would bolster his overall abilities. He intended to wear weighted bracelets on his arms and legs, along with a weighted chest piece, each bracelet weighing 15 kilograms and the chest piece 25 kilograms, while following a rigorous exercise regime. After lunch, his training schedule included running with the weights, resting with flexibility exercises, performing numerous push-ups and squats, and practicing his fire and lightning powers to understand his limits and build endurance against the backlash. As evening approached, he felt the strain in his body but knew he would adapt over time. After completing his training, he decided to take a nice bath, thoroughly cleaning his tails, which had gathered dust. Once dressed in sleepwear, he headed downstairs for dinner, finding himself alone since it was already late and everyone else had finished eating. After dinner, he returned inside to find his classmates asleep, leaving a space in the middle for him. He thought to himself that they must have trained hard to be so exhausted. The character transformed into a small fox and quietly made their way to the center of the area without disturbing anyone. Once there, they shifted back to their normal form and settled down to sleep while cuddling with Winter, who was also in her human form. During the first 5 days of a 30-day training regimen, Izuku adapted to the routine, and his body no longer felt sore. From the 5th to the 15th day, he increased the weight he was lifting by 5 kilograms. Although it was challenging at first, he quickly adjusted to the new demands. On the second to last day of training, Izuku removed his weighted bracelets and chest piece. Instantly, he felt lighter and faster. His abilities, including his various forms, flames, and lightning powers, were significantly enhanced. He discovered he could maintain lightning mode for 6 hours and dual element mode for 1 hour before exhausting his energy. Izuku reflected on the day before the sports festival. He had just tested his limits after removing his weights and felt a significant improvement. Although he hadn't spent much time with his friends, he had practiced for his concert planned with 𝗎𝗍. He hoped to relax with light training, but it seemed fate had other plans. In front of him stood Yui, Shiozaki, and Kendo, who expressed their longing to take him to meet their classmates. He sighed but nodded, understanding the importance of maintaining good relations with other classes. As they walked together, they shared details about their class, which mostly consisted of girls who were close friends. Upon arriving at Class 1B's dorm, Kendo entered, instructing Izuku to wait while she informed everyone of his presence. Izuku remembered Yui mentioning that Itsuka was like a big sister to Class 1B, which made sense given her caring nature. After a short while, 20 girls emerged from the dorm, most holding hands, except for 9. He waved and introduced himself, hoping for a friendly interaction. However, a blonde girl with purple eyes shouted, expressing disdain for Class 1A. Izuku glanced at Yui, confirmed that this was the trash talker she had mentioned, someone upset about not being in Class 1A and exhibiting a superiority complex. The girl continued her tirade, questioning why Kendo, Ibra, and Kodai were dating someone like him. In response, Yui, Kendo, and Ibra swiftly defended Izuku, silencing the girl. As the other girls introduced themselves, Izuku felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. A girl resembling an adorable blonde pony introduced herself as Pony Tsunatori, expressing enthusiasm about meeting him. He smiled and nodded, then recognized another girl with dark green hair who had previously encouraged him to sing a 𝗬𝗬 song. She grinned and introduced herself as Setsuna Tokichi. Next, he met Reiko Yanagi, a girl with silvery white hair who appeared slightly sleep-deprived but charming. He also greeted Tetsuya, the silver-haired girl he had met before, who returned his wave with excitement. Finally, the trash talker introduced herself as Nieto Mona. After their introductions, they spent the evening together, enjoying each other's company. As the clock struck 7:30 p.m., Izuku, along with Yui, Kendo, and Ibra, returned to their room for dinner and rest. On the day of the sports festival, Izuku and Bakugo were in the boys' changing room with Mineta, preparing for the event. Izuku remarked that it was time to see who among the first years was truly the strongest. Bakugo grinned, declaring he wouldn't hold back, to which Izuku replied that he felt the same way. After changing, they met up with the girls at the entrance to the field, waiting for Present Mic to announce their entrance. When Present Mic activated the microphone, he greeted the crowd enthusiastically, announcing the start of the sports festival. The crowd erupted in cheers as he introduced Class 1A, highlighting their survival of a villain attack with the help of their charming class president, Izuku Midoriya. The audience cheered loudly as they made their entrance. Mike continued with the introduction of Class 1B, acknowledging their talent despite not being in the spotlight as much. Izuku waved at them, receiving friendly gestures in return. Present Mike then introduced the general courses, support courses, and business courses, announcing a total of 200 participants for the event. As other classes exited from different entrances, a sense of nervousness filled the air. One girl expressed her confusion about their purpose, wondering if they were merely there to showcase the hero course students. It was understandable, especially after Miss Present Mic's enthusiastic introduction of the other courses. Then, Present Mic announced with excitement that the proctor for the day's sports festival for first years was the R-rated heroine, Midnight. Midnight appeared on stage, dressed in a form-fitting suit, striking a pose that made Izuku blush and look away. He sensed a dark aura around him, but it vanished almost instantly. To capture everyone's attention, Midnight cracked her WHP and took the microphone, announcing that they would invite the first-year representative, the charming Izuku Midoriya, for a speech. Blushing at the mention of his name, Izuku felt determined to deliver a great speech. He walked onto the stage, smiled at Midnight, and took the microphone. Addressing the audience, he expressed his gratitude for their attendance at UA's annual sports festival. As the crowd cheered, he continued, encouraging everyone to have fun and to remember that everyone had a chance to win, regardless of their course. He concluded with a spirited call to action, urging everyone to go plus ultra. The crowd responded enthusiastically, raising their hands and shouting in unison. After his speech, Izuku handed the microphone back to Midnight. Instead of taking it, she pulled him close and gave him a quick peck on the cheek, causing him to blush even more as the crowd cheered. Midnight then took the microphone and complimented him on his nice speech, leaving him feeling flustered as he noticed the jealous expressions of his friends and other girls in the audience. Determined to give his all in the competition, Izuku promised himself to hold nothing back, though he decided to keep his dual element mode a secret, aware that villains might be watching. Midnight announced that the first event of the day would be a 4-kilometer obstacle course around the stadium, where contestants could use their quirks on each other but would be disqualified for causing excessive damage. With a confident smirk, Izuku activated his Godspeed mode, surrounded by blue lightning that created wind pressure, startling some of the other contestants. Midnight called them to the starting line, and as she said, "On your marks," Izuku prepared himself. When she shouted, "And go!" he took off at top speed, quickly passing the 0-pointers who were oblivious to his presence. Reaching the second obstacle, which appeared to be a pitfall, he looked at the camera and waved as Miss Present Mic exclaimed in surprise at how quickly he had advanced, noting that many students hadn't even crossed the starting line yet. The crowd was astonished, realizing that Mike was indeed telling the truth. With a triumphant smirk, Izuku activated blue flames to levitate, soaring over the pitfall and the mines, landing at the entrance of the tunnel. He dashed through it with his usual speed and crossed the finish line to the sound of roaring cheers. Miss Present Mike announced in disbelief that he had completed the course in just 30 seconds, shattering All Might's previous record of 2 minutes and 3 seconds. Aizawa, observing from the sidelines, explained that Izuku had trained for 4 years, applying his quirk in various ways to enhance his abilities. He noted that Izuku's hard work had made him faster than All Might could ever be. The crowd erupted in cheers at Aizawa's explanation. Afterward, Izuku made his way to Midnight, sitting next to her and resting his head on her shoulder, knowing she would remain seated until it was time for the next event announcement. He woke from his nap to find Midnight smiling and gently petting his ears. The comforting sensation made him let out a soft sound of contentment. When he looked up, he noticed Midnight blushing but quickly regained her composure. Izuku leaned closer so that Midnight Sensei's hand rested on his head again and asked her to pet him a bit. She smiled and began to slide his hair. Suddenly, Present Mic's voice boomed, announcing the results. He exclaimed that the other crew had returned, with Katsuki Bakugo taking second place and Shoko Todoroki and Fuyumi Todoroki in third and fourth, respectively. Izuku stood up from near Midnight Sensei and approached Bakugo with a smirk, teasing him about being too slow. Bakugo growled in response, promising to claim first place in the next round. Izuku challenged him to bring it on. Next, he moved to Shoko and Fuyumi, wrapping his tails around them in a hug and congratulating them on their performance. They smiled and kissed him on each cheek, prompting a chuckle from him. He then approached Momo and Jirou, offering them hugs with his tails as well. They giggled and thanked him, giving him similar cheek kisses. Izuku continued to Kendo and Ijira, giving them each a fist bump before moving on to Yui and Ibra, congratulating them with a kiss on their hands. Finally, he returned to where Midnight was standing, ready to announce the next challenge. Midnight Sensei took the stage and congratulated the top 42 contestants who had made it past the first round. She then explained the rules for the second round, a cavalry battle where teams of 2 to 4 would compete. The points system was laid out, with the 42nd place earning 10 points, 41st place earning 15 points, and so on. The first place team would receive a reward of 1 million. As the announcement concluded, Izuku sensed a wave of competitive energy directed at him. He smirked and raised his own presence, causing the other students to feel the weight of his determination. He declared that they could try, but they wouldn't win. Noticing that many of the girls were avoiding him, he felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see Bakugo. Bakugo proposed they team up to take on the others, suggesting that Izuku looked like he could use some help. Izuku smirked and revealed his plan. Bakugo would be the rider while Izuku would use his abilities to keep them airborne, far from the reach of their opponents. After 10 minutes, all the teams were formed, and Midnight returned to announce the team layouts. She explained that no team would be eliminated unless their rider fell to the ground. Tetsu-san noted that this meant all 11 teams would remain in play throughout the round. Midnight instructed the riders to get on top of their teams, and after a countdown, she yelled for the battle to begin. Izuku immediately activated his blue fire, propelling them 100 meters into the sky, where they floated, ready to defend against incoming attacks while Bakugo prepared his explosions. For the first 2 minutes, nothing happened, but soon Izuku and Bakugo began to feel a chill. Realizing it was Fuyumi's doing, Izuku flared his fire to keep them warm and announced that they needed to keep moving. He dodged various attacks while maintaining his fire to counter Shoko's ice. This continued for 5 minutes as the other teams struggled to deal with the duo's defenses, leading them to target each other's headbands instead. After the time was up, Midnight announced for everyone to stop and look at the screen to see which teams advanced to the finals. Present Mike declared the results. First place went to Team Bakugo, second to Team Shoko Todoroki, third to Team Ibra Shiozaki, fourth to Team Hanashiro, and fifth to Team Shino. Kendo and Ojura approached Midnight, expressing their longing to withdraw from the tournament due to a lack of memory regarding the second round. Despite their classmates' attempts to convince them otherwise, they stood firm in their decision. Midnight accepted their request, leaving 16 participants for the final round, which would be a one-on-one tournament style. Meanwhile, in the stands where the heroes were observing, discussions arose about potential participants. One hero contemplated 𝗧𝗂𝗵𝗲 potential, considering how he could teach him stealth and weaponry. They also noted Momo Yaoyorozu's endless potential and thought about guiding her in the ways of a ninja, eager to see how both would perform in the upcoming fights. After Midnight announced the one-on-one battles between 16 combatants, 𝗵𝗃 declared that there would be a 1-hour break for students to have lunch and replenish their fighting spirit. Izuku turned to his group and suggested they have lunch together, receiving nods and a few affirmatives in response. They made their way to the lunch area designated for participants and stood in line to get their meals. A few students from Class 1B greeted them, and they engaged in light conversation, though Itomonoma attempted to trash talk but was swiftly silenced by Kendo, who sent him to the nearby exit. They settled at a table, with Izuku sitting between Bakugo and Mina. As they chatted, Izuku inquired about Mina's fighting style, noting its reliance on flexibility and speed, with her quirk as the main offense. Mina explained that she enjoyed dancing, which influenced her fighting style, making her flexible and unpredictable. However, she admitted she needed more muscle power for striking. Izuku contemplated this for a moment and asked if she could teach him to dance after the festival, as he had always found it interesting, despite not being a dancer himself. Mina's face lit up with excitement as she shook his shoulders, exclaiming that they would have a lot of fun together, calling him her dance junior. Izuku chuckled nervously at her enthusiasm and agreed that it would be enjoyable. Once they finished lunch, 𝗵𝗃 called the 16 finalists to the field. They made their way there, observing a large square fighting arena at the center, with Midnight standing beside a small box filled with ball, presumably for a lucky draw to determine the matchups. Midnight announced that they would decide who would face whom using the lucky draw, explaining that each ball contained a number, 1 would face 2, 3 would face 4, and so on. The finalists nodded and approached the box one by one to retrieve their ball, instructed not to open them until Midnight gave the signal. Izuku was the last to draw a ball. When Midnight finally permitted them to open their ball, Izuku unfolded the paper inside and discovered he had drawn the number 2. After a brief moment, everyone opened their papers, and the matchups were revealed on the big screen. The final tournament matchups were as follows. First match, Hiroshi Shinso vs 𝗧𝗂𝗵𝗲. Second match, Ibara Shiozaki vs Ochako Uraraka. Third match, Aoi Yuga vs Tetsu. Fourth match, Tenya Ida vs Fuyumi Todoroki. Fifth match, Momo Yaoyorozu vs Hana Siro. Sixth match, Shoko Todoroki vs Mina Ashido. Seventh match, Katsuki Bakugo vs Denka Kaminari. Eighth match, Ijiro Kirishima vs 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗲. A grin spread across Izuku's face as he realized he was about to participate in his first fight. Midnight announced that everyone except the 2 combatants in the first match should head to the spectator seats for their allotted classes. Everyone but Izuku and Hiroshi Shinso moved to their seats. The first match was between Hiroshi Shinso and 𝗧𝗂𝗵𝗲. 𝗵𝗃 introduced the fighters, describing Shinso as an underdog from the general class and Izuku as the cute and popular powerhouse of UA. Izuku felt a bit embarrassed by the introduction but focused on his opponent. Observing that Ojira and Itsuka had retired, he noted that Shinso seemed capable of controlling minds or bodies. He realized there must be a condition for her quirk to activate, and he planned to analyze her silently during the match, knowing that mind control often relied on voice. Midnight stepped into the center of the arena and asked if both fighters were ready. Izuku nodded, and so did Shinso. With a signal to begin, Midnight jumped off the stage. Shinso stood without a stance and taunted Izuku, suggesting he must be gifted to possess a strong quirk. Izuku recognized her attempt to provoke a reaction and decided to act quickly. He rushed in, noticing Shinso's stance had many openings. As he reached her, she attempted to punch him in the face, but he easily evaded it. Channeling all his strength, he struck her stomach, sending her flying out of the arena and into the wall. She landed on her back, clutching her stomach and coughing slightly. Midnight announced that the victor was 𝗧𝗂𝗵𝗲. He smiled and approached Shinso, who was still on the ground in pain. He extended his hand to help her up. She scowled, questioning if he was there to gloat. Izuku replied that if she had faced anyone else, she might have won, but her lack of physical training had been a disadvantage. He suggested she seek advice. From a teacher about training and weaponry, recommending Aizawa, who also had a quirk without physical benefits. Shinso looked surprised as she processed his words and smiled, expressing her determination to try harder next year. Izuku grinned as she took his hand and stood up. He then stepped away as medical bots arrived to assist her. Returning to his class's booth, he received congratulations for his match, and his speech had been shown on the big screen, leaving several students in awe. He chuckled nervously and settled in for the next match. The second match was between Ibara Shiozaki and Ochako Uraraka. Izuku felt sympathy for Uraraka, knowing Ibara possessed one of the strongest quirks among the first years. Ibara's vine-like hair could extend up to 80 meters, and she had excellent quirk control. Her quirk had few drawbacks, primarily being weak without sunlight or against fire-type quirks, but those weaknesses could be overcome. He turned to Bakugo and suggested he console Uraraka, as Ibara's quirk would make it nearly impossible for her to get close. He noted that Uraraka would need a speed quirk like Ida's or a fire quirk like Shoko's to counter Ibara. Bakugo looked a bit concerned for his friend but nodded, acknowledging Uraraka's hard work in training for the tournament. Izuku encouraged him to support her, even if she claimed to be fine, and Bakugo headed off to where Uraraka would exit after the match. Present Mike announced the second match, introducing Ibara as the Holy Maiden of Yue, and Uraraka as the Adorable Machi. Aizawa sighed, commenting that quirk-wise, Uraraka had the least chance. He acknowledged her strength but noted that Ibara's quirk could maintain distance and strike hard. Unless Uraraka had a solid tactic, she wouldn't last long. Izuku nodded in agreement, pondering the dynamic between Present Mike and Aizawa. Midnight asked the two fighters if they were ready, and they nodded. With a signal to begin, Uraraka immediately used her quirk to lighten her clothes for increased speed and charged toward Ibara. However, as she took her fifth step, vines emerged from the ground, wrapping around her and preventing her from breaking free. Ibara looked at Uraraka with sympathy and regret, realizing she hadn't been given a fair chance. Gently, Ibara placed Uraraka outside the arena as Midnight declared her the winner. Izuku saw Uraraka's face fall in disappointment as she made her way to Bakugo, who waited in the shadows. They disappeared around the corner together. He turned his attention to the screen, where the third match was about to begin. The third match was between Aoi Yuga and 𝗧𝗪𝗧. Izuku thought this would be a battle of endurance, as Aoi's lasers could pierce through steel with effort, and he was certain 𝗧𝗪 had trained hard with her quirk. It would be a test of who could last the longest, likely relying more on quirk power than physical confrontation. 𝗧𝗪-san would likely win if she had the upper hand in speed to dodge, but judging by how similar she is to Ijira, her speed should be average, making it difficult for her to evade the lasers. Present Mike announced that the third match was between the sparkling girl Aoi Yuga from Class 1A and the ultimate steel warrior with spikes, 𝗧𝗪𝗧. Aizawa rubbed his ears and remarked that, in terms of quirks, Aoi Yuga had an advantage, but this battle would come down to who had the most endurance. It seemed that Aizawa was thinking along the same lines as him. Midnight then signaled the start of the match and jumped away. Yuga-san immediately shot a laser from her navel, while 𝗧𝗪-san, left with no choice, blocked the attack by crossing her arms in an X position and hardening them with a thick layer of steel. After 3 minutes, Aoi-san was breathing and still shooting lasers, albeit weakly, while 𝗧𝗪-san was constantly reinforcing her hands with her quirk and appeared slightly exhausted. Eventually, Aoi-san raised her hand and surrendered. Observing 𝗧𝗪-san, he noticed a bit of black where the laser had been hitting consistently. Midnight declared 𝗧𝗪-san the winner as the two fighters shook hands and returned to their corners. Present Mike complained that there had been no action, just endurance, but Aizawa quickly silenced him, stating that not all quirks could be used in close combat and to stop letting personal feelings interfere. He chuckled at their antics and turned his attention to the fourth matchup. The fourth match was between Tenya Ida and Fuyumi Todoroki. He felt both had an equal chance of winning, depending on their skills. Present Mixed Commentary announced the match, referring to Ida as the human version of an Audi and Fuyumi as the most comfortable and huggable girl. He chuckled as both Ida and Fuyumi reacted to their nicknames, glaring at Present Mike, who felt a chill as Fuyumi used her quirk on him. Aizawa sighed and signaled Fuyumi to stop, which she reluctantly did. Midnight chuckled and called for the match to begin. Fuyumi immediately yelled, "Area 0, freezing Ida and the area around her. Just as Midnight was about to declare Fuyumi the winner, she noticed cracks forming as Ida broke free, shivering slightly from the lingering ice. It became clear that Ida had used his reciprocal burst to melt the ice with the turbo fire from his engines. He rushed toward Fuyumi, aiming a fast kick at her face, but she dodged and countered with a punch to his back, sending him tumbling. However, Ida quickly regained his footing and engaged in close-quarter combat, throwing punches and kicks that Fuyumi blocked and deflected. After a while, Fuyumi froze the area around her hand and delivered a powerful punch to Ida's face, sending him tumbling toward the edge, where he ultimately fell off. Midnight declared Fuyumi the winner as the crowd erupted in appreciation for the exciting match. He smiled as Fuyumi looked his way and gave him a thumbs up, which he returned. Ida appeared a bit disappointed but content with his performance as he turned his attention to the next matchup. The sports festival would continue for 3 more chapters, featuring other perspectives mixed in. In the 5th match, Momo Yaoyorozu faced Hana Shiro. He believed Shiro-san had a chance, but knowing Momo, who was a quirk enthusiast like him, she would likely have a counter ready for Shiro-san. Momo created something but kept it hidden under her UA jacket, while Shiro-san stretched, looking a bit nervous. Present Mike announced the 5th match, introducing Shiro as the tape industry representative and Momo as the creation queen. Aizawa noted that both had a chance, but it seemed Yaoyorozu had a plan. He nodded and looked around, seeing everyone from his class cheering for both competitors. Turning to 𝗓𝗓 beside him, he asked if she was not rooting for Momo. 𝗓𝗓 smiled and replied that she already knew Momo's plan, as she had been practicing it for a while. The excitement in the arena was palpable as the match began. Midnight asked if the competitors were ready, and Momo and Shiro nodded in agreement. With a commanding shout of "Begin!", Midnight leaped away, and Shiro immediately attempted to ensnare Momo with tape. However, Momo swiftly produced a stun gun and fired at Shiro's legs, causing him to stumble and fall to the ground, momentarily immobilized. Seizing the opportunity, Momo used Shiro's tape to wrap him up completely, leaving only his face exposed. Momo then inquired if Shiro was ready to give up, to which Shiro sighed and conceded his surrender. Midnight announced that the 5th match was awarded to Momo Yaoyorozu and requested the stun gun back. Momo casually tossed it to Midnight, who caught it with a mischievous smile, hinting at future plans. As Momo and Midnight helped Shiro to his feet, the crowd erupted in cheers, encouraging Shiro with shouts of support. Momo and Shiro returned to their corners, while I focused on the next matchup displayed on the screen. The 6th match featured Shoko Todoroki versus Mina Ishido. Both competitors were skilled and had the potential to counter each other's quirks effectively. Mina could melt ice with her acid, while Shoko could unleash flames against acid. Present Mike enthusiastically announced the match, and Aizawa commented that the outcome would depend on their skillful use of their quirks. With Midnight confirming the fighters were ready, she shouted "Begin!" and jumped away. Shoko launched massive ice pillars at Mina, who countered with a large ball of corrosive acid that melted through the ice, creating an opening. Mina quickly slid toward Shoko, but Shoko retaliated with a burst of flames. Mina skillfully jumped high, evading the flames, and zigzagged her way closer to Shoko. As the match progressed, Mina managed to dodge both ice and fire attacks, landing a punch to Shoko's stomach before leaping back to avoid an ice punch. Surrounding her fists with acid, Mina aimed for Shoko's face, but Shoko skillfully caught Mina's elbow, flipping her over and sending her soaring into the air. Shoko created an ice slide beneath Mina, who struggled to regain her balance midair. Just as she began to slide off the edge, Mina melted part of the ice with her acid, managing to stay in the arena. Mina then jumped to the side, narrowly avoiding another burst of flames, and unleashed an acid barrage, sending small ball of acid toward Shoko. Shoko skillfully maneuvered, sliding on ice to evade the attack. As Shoko closed the distance, she sent another ice pillar toward Mina. Mina melted through it but found herself overwhelmed as Shoko continued to bombard her with ice. After a few intense minutes, Mina's hands grew tired, and she was ultimately pushed out of the arena by Shoko's ice. Midnight declared Shoko Todoroki the winner of the sixth match. The crowd cheered for both fighters, appreciating the thrilling contest, while a few heroes discussed the impressive display of skill. As Shoko approached Mina, who was pouting, she remarked that it had been the toughest fight she had faced, aside from Izuku. Mina, with a grin, promised that she would definitely win next time. Both competitors shook hands before heading to their respective exits. Izuku smiled as he turned his attention to the screen displaying the seventh matchup, Katsuki Bakugo vs Denka Kaminari. He felt a twinge of sympathy for Denka, knowing that unless she could catch Bakugo off guard with a powerful attack, victory would be difficult. Present Mike announced the match, and Eraser commented that it would be challenging for Kaminari unless she had a solid strategy. Denka Kaminari entered the arena looking a bit nervous, while Katsuki Bakugo emerged with a confident smirk, ready for action. Midnight asked if both fighters were prepared, and they nodded. Denka expressed her concern about facing Bakugo, who simply grinned in response. With a shout of "Begin!" Denka decided to take a chance and unleashed 2,000,000 volts, directing her attack at Bakugo. He countered with a massive explosion that shook the arena, absorbing the electric attack due to his quirk's fire resistance. Katsuki observed Denka, who was making a playful face and giving her thumbs up while exclaiming in excitement. With a sweat drop, he approached Denka, picked her up, and placed her outside the ring. The crowd reacted with mixed feelings, booing slightly at the one-sided match as Midnight declared Katsuki Bakugo the winner. While the crowd cheered, many were left unsatisfied by the swift conclusion of the fight. Izuku and the others observed the final matchup of the first round, 𝐒𝐻𝐢𝐴 Kirishima vs myheroacademia. Izuku found the matchup intriguing, considering 𝗔𝐻𝐢𝐴's skill with her quirk, but he wondered how 𝗧𝗵𝗲 would manage with her gadgets. Present Mike announced the match, introducing the inventive prodigy myheroacademia from the support course against the rock-hard redhead 𝗔𝐻𝐢𝐴 Kirishima from the hero course. Eraserhead responded thoughtfully, noting that while 𝗧𝗵𝗲 might have inventions to counter 𝗔𝐻𝐢𝐴, the latter excelled in close-range combat. As 𝗧𝗵𝗲 entered the arena, she was decked out in various support gear, while 𝗔𝐻𝐢𝐴 awkwardly wore some of 𝗧𝗵𝗲's gadgets. After confirming that both fighters were ready, Midnight shouted for the match to begin and leaped away. 15 minutes passed with myheroacademia skillfully dodging 𝗔𝐻𝐢𝐴 while explaining her support gear to various business representatives. Eventually, she stepped out of the arena and announced her surrender. 𝗔𝐻𝐢𝐴, feeling embarrassed and frustrated at being outmaneuvered, expressed his discontent loudly. The audience watched in disbelief as Midnight declared 𝗔𝐻𝐢𝐴 Kirishima the winner due to 𝗧𝗵𝗲's surrender. 𝗔𝐻𝐢𝐴 left the arena in tears, while 𝗧𝗵𝗲 walked away proudly. Present Mike then announced a 10-minute break before the quarterfinals of the one-on-one tournament, with matchups to be displayed after the break. Izuku decided to approach 𝗔𝐻𝐢𝐴 while the others went to grab refreshments. Izuku comforted 𝗔𝐻𝐢𝐴, who was still shedding tears. He reassured her that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had made her choice for her future and that 𝗔𝐻𝐢𝐴 would have the opportunity to fight in more meaningful battles later. 𝗔𝐻𝐢𝐴 nodded, leaning in for a gentle kiss, which Izuku reciprocated, sharing a sweet moment together. Meanwhile, Melissa watched from the corridor, pouting before smirking and walking away. Back in the class, students from Class 1A chatted with those from Class 1B as they returned from the refreshment stand. Kendo expressed her frustration about not being able to spend time with Izuku, while Fuyumi pointed out that they shared a room. Ibra chimed in, wishing for time with her fiancé, and Yui reminded her of a recent date, prompting laughter from the group. Mina was animatedly discussing her near victory with Denka, who seemed less enthusiastic. Katsuki and Ochako walked hand in hand, engaged in conversation, while Mei observed Bakugo with interest. As the class settled back into their seats, they awaited the announcement of the quarterfinal matchups, finding Izuku waiting for them alongside 𝗔𝐻𝐻𝐴. Izuku noted that the pairings were randomized, so he wouldn't be fighting 𝗔𝐻𝐴. Present Mike announced the names of the students advancing to the quarterfinals, which included Izuku Midoriya, Ibra Shiozaki, Tetsu Tetsuya, Fuyumi Todoroki, Momo Yaoyorozu, Shoko Todoroki, Katsuki Bakugo, and 𝗔𝐻𝐢𝐴 Kirishima. The screen displayed the matchups, revealing that Izuku would face 𝗔𝐻𝐻𝐴 in the final match. 𝐒𝐬𝐼𝐧𝐻 excitement was palpable while Momo and Fuyumi exchanged handshakes. Katsuki grinned, and Shoko remained stoic. Ibra and Tetsu exchanged competitive glances before heading to the arena. Izuku sighed, determined to rely on his physical strength without overexerting himself. As the quarterfinals commenced, Present Mic introduced the first match, Ibra Shiozaki vs Tetsu Tetsa. Both competitors entered the arena, with Tetsu playfully criticizing Present Mic for a lack of originality, causing the announcer to chuckle nervously. Midnight stepped into the arena and looked at the students, who nodded in response as she declared that the battle would begin. As soon as Midnight announced the start, Ibra unleashed a barrage of fist-shaped vines, delivering a relentless stream of punches. Tetsa braced herself, using her quirk at full power to absorb the blows. However, Tetsa needed to be extremely close to her target, while Ibra excelled at range with her unique control over her quirk. After 5 minutes, Ibra's punches began to slow, and Tetsa was on the verge of exhaustion. With one final punch, Tetsa's defense crumbled, sending her out of the ring with the force of the impact. Midnight then declared Ibra Shiozaki from Class 1B as the winner of this round. Ibra, slightly exhausted, approached the unconscious Tetsa, using her vines to lift her and carry her to the recovery girl, earning cheers from the audience for her sportsmanship. Izuku thought to himself that it was a brilliant strategy. He considered using his tail hardening combined with lightning and a barrage of attacks but decided to give Tetsa a chance to prove herself. Aizawa then spoke through the microphone, noting that although the match seemed one-sided, the force behind each punch from Ibra's vines could break through a 30 centimeters thick brick wall. He compared Tetsa to an unbreakable shield, similar to Ijira Kirishima, which caught the attention of several heroes. The second match of the quarterfinals featured Momo Yaoyorozu against Fuyumi Todoroki. Present Mic announced the competitors, highlighting their excellent thinking and hand-to-hand combat skills, and the audience was eager to see who would prevail. Momo and Fuyumi entered the arena with competitive smiles, Momo dressed in a cloth covering her body except for her head, wielding a bow staff. They both nodded to Midnight, who signaled the start of the battle. Fuyumi immediately attempted to freeze Momo's legs, but Momo struck the ice with her bow staff, breaking free and sprinting toward Fuyumi with enhanced speed from her spring-loaded shoes. Fuyumi tried to raise the temperature around Momo to tire her out, but it had no effect. Momo reached Fuyumi and swung her bow staff, but Fuyumi sidestepped and kicked it out of her hand. Fuyumi then aimed a punch at Momo's stomach, which Momo blocked with her palm while grabbing Fuyumi's hand with her other hand, attempting to flip her. Fuyumi regained her balance mid-air and landed perfectly, escaping Momo's hold. Momo then delivered a solid punch to Fuyumi's shoulder, causing her to stumble. Fuyumi weaved through a few punches and landed a strong hit to Momo's stomach, making her bend forward. Fuyumi followed up with an uppercut aimed at Momo's face, but Momo crossed her arms to block it. Momo then executed a sharp kick to Fuyumi's head, which connected and sent Fuyumi to the ground, dazed. Seizing the opportunity, Momo created a stun stick taser and lightly struck Fuyumi's neck, sending a low voltage of electricity through her, rendering Fuyumi unconscious. Midnight checked on Fuyumi and announced that she was unconscious, declaring Momo Yaoyorozu from Class 1A the winner of the match. Izuku stood up and clapped, joined by the rest of the audience, as he reflected on the incredible skills displayed by both competitors. Momo applied light bandages to Fuyumi's face where the kick had landed, and Fuyumi was taken away by the medical bots. The third match of the quarterfinals featured Katsuki Bakugo against Shoko Todoroki. Present Mic announced the competitors, emphasizing Bakugo's explosive abilities and Shoko's mastery of fire and ice. Izuku envisioned various scenarios for the fight, which unfolded similarly to the anime, with Shoko utilizing her fire abilities to secure victory. Midnight then announced that Katsuki Bakugo was unconscious, awarding the win to Shoko Todoroki from Class 1A. Izuku observed the heroes around him, some engaged in conversation while others debated, and he shook his head before making his way to the arena. The fourth match featured Izuku Midoriya against Ijira Kirishima. Present Mic introduced the competitors, highlighting Ijira's reputation as the Red Rock fighter and Izuku's newfound title as the god of high school. Izuku entered the arena with a smile, mirrored by 𝗔𝗓𝗓, who gave a thumbs up to present Mike in acknowledgement of the nickname. They both nodded to Midnight, who signaled the start of the battle. 𝗔𝗓𝗓 launched a right cross at Izuku's face, which he blocked, and continued her combo. After being blocked, 𝗔𝗓𝗓 grabbed Izuku's hand, pulling him in to catch him off guard, and delivered a kick aimed at his head and midsection, which Izuku dodged. 𝗔𝗓𝗓 then created some distance and hardened her fists, preparing for another combo that began with a chop to Izuku's neck. However, Izuku deflected her attacks and countered with an elbow strike that pushed her back. Realizing punches weren't effective, 𝗔𝗓𝗓 targeted Izuku's pressure points, but he countered and pushed her away. He then executed a one-handed backflip to dodge her attack and charged in with 3 pressure point strikes, which 𝗔𝗓𝗓 managed to negate. 𝗔𝗓𝗓 jumped back and attempted a 360-degree spin kick to Izuku's face, but he caught her with one hand. Using his other hand, he lifted 𝗔𝗓𝗓 and threw her to the side of the arena, activating his lightning mode. Emerald lightning crackled around his body before settling into sparks. Izuku practically teleported in front of 𝗔𝗓𝗓, who was caught off guard and received a powerful kick to her torso. 𝗔𝗓𝗓 flew back, colliding with the wall and creating a large dent before landing on the grass, clutching her stomach and breathing heavily. Midnight declared that since contender 𝗔𝗓𝗓 Kirishima had been knocked out of the arena, the winner for the round was Izuku Midoriya from Class 1A. Izuku smiled as he picked up 𝗔𝗓𝗓 in a princess carry and made his way to the exit. The crowd erupted in applause, celebrating the impressive performance and the sportsmanship displayed at the end. Class 1A headed to the recovery girls' office to check on their friends, as there was a 20-minute break until the semifinals. After the break, the audience settled back into their seats, eagerly awaiting the announcement regarding the remaining fighters in the tournament. Class 1B students offered mental support and strategies to help their teammate win her battle. Fuyumi, Jirou, and Shoko engaged in a pleasant conversation with Momo, who appeared deep in thought. Shoko remained calm, while Izuku wore a stern expression, his gaze fixed intently on the big screen, anticipating the pairings. The sound of a microphone being turned on drew everyone's attention to the announcement box, where present Mike leaned on Aizawa's shoulders, ready to speak. He announced that it was time for the semifinals, but there would be a change this year. Instead of the usual format, they would proceed directly to the finals with a 2 versus 2 battle. The winning pair would receive gold medals, while the losing pair would compete for 2nd and 3rd places. Present Mike then handed the stage over to Miss Midnight to shuffle the pairings. The big screen displayed Midnight in front of a bowl containing 4 neatly folded papers. She picked up the microphone and explained her process for selecting the teams. The crowd cheered as Midnight mixed the papers in the bowl. After a moment, she announced the first paper, revealing Ibara Shiozaki as the first member of Team A. Ibara stepped onto the stage, eagerly waiting for her partner and hoping it would be the green-haired. Midnight then selected the second paper and announced that the final member of Team A was Izuku Midoriya. The crowd erupted in cheers as Ibara smiled at Izuku, joyfully celebrating in her mind. Momo and Shoko, now on Team B, exchanged serious looks and whispered strategies to each other. Midnight began to explain the rules when Momo interrupted, requesting to speak. Midnight, visibly annoyed, turned to Momo and asked what she wanted to say. Momo approached the microphone, with Shoko standing beside her, and announced their decision to surrender the match. The crowd fell silent, shocked by the announcement. Aizawa, frustrated, urged them to explain their reasoning. Momo expressed her gratitude to Aizawa and explained that she had sustained many injuries during her previous match against Fuyumi, which had drained her stamina. She admitted that she was too exhausted to continue and handed the microphone to Shoko, who shared her own struggles from 2 exhausting fights, stating that she was barely able to stand. The crowd cheered in support, recognizing the humanity of these powerful teens and their need for rest. Momo then declared that Shoko would take 2nd place and she would take 3rd. As Ibara and Izuku approached Momo and Shoko, they shared a warm hug and exchanged words of encouragement. The stadium officials prepared the platform for the winners while Momo and Shoko sat on a bench provided by Miss 𝗬𝗲𝗏, discussing their perspectives on the sports festival. After a few minutes, the 4 winners were called to stand on the podium, with Izuku and 𝗓𝗲𝗄 in first place, Shoko in second, and Momo in third. Midnight took the stage again, announcing the winners and expressing hope that the audience was satisfied with the performances of the future heroes. To present the medals, she invited All Might onto the stage. The crowd murmured in excitement at the honor of receiving medals from the symbol of peace. All Might landed dramatically on the podium in front of Momo, taking a bronze medal from Midnight and placing it around her neck. He praised her for her strategic skills and understanding of her limits, encouraging her to broaden her knowledge of weapons to enhance her effectiveness in the field. Momo nodded as she contemplated the advice. All Might then took a silver medal from Midnight and placed it around Shoko's neck, telling her that she was both smart and strong, and her performance had been remarkable. However, he advised her to be more creative with her moves to gain better control in various situations. Shoko smiled and nodded in response. Next, All Might approached 𝗓𝗲𝗄, taking a gold medal and placing it around her neck. He acknowledged her excellent control over her quirk, noting that it was quite resourceful in many situations. He encouraged her to work on her hand-to-hand combat abilities or learn to use a weapon for better self-defense. 𝗓𝗲𝗄 nodded and smiled as she admired the medal. When All Might moved to Izuku, he stopped him, pleading with Midnight to let him take the microphone. He expressed his longing to receive the medal from his family, as they were the ones who had brought him to this moment. He shared that he had been an orphan before endeavour took him in and provided him with a family. The crowd erupted in cheers as the Todoroki family made their way to the stadium, with Enji, Rei, Dabi, and Natsuo leading the way, while Fuyumi waited at the entrance. Endeavour took the medal from All Might, and Rei, Dabi, and Natsuo each placed a hand on the medal as they placed it around Izuku's neck. Rei hugged him first, expressing her pride in him and affirming that he would always be part of their family. Fuyumi and Shoko then joined the embrace, and soon the entire family was in a group hug, smiling as media and news channels captured the moment. After a few minutes, the excitement began to settle, and the Todoroki family, except for Izuku, returned to the stands. Nizu then emerged from Aizawa's scarf as President Mike announced that it was time for the final event featuring Izuku Midoriya, who had agreed to perform 3 songs on stage that he had written himself. The crowd cheered as the open sky was covered by a dome, plunging the area into darkness before lights illuminated the stage, revealing Izuku standing in the center with a microphone in hand, having already submitted his songs to the staff. Izuku raised his head and expressed that it was his first time singing in front of such a large audience, hoping everyone would enjoy it. The crowd cheered as the music began to play. I Know It Breaks Your Heart, moving to the city in a broken-down car. 4 years have passed with no calls, and now you're looking great in a hotel bar. The feeling is overwhelming, and it seems impossible to stop. So, the invitation is clear to get closer in the back seat of a rover that is clearly beyond reach. The tattoo on the shoulder tells a story, and the sheets are pulled right off the corner of the mattress that was taken from a roommate back in Boulder. Time feels like it stands still, and the years seem to fade away. You look just as good as the day they first met. The memories are hazy, and the reasons for leaving seem distant. The music plays on, a familiar tune that brings back memories of carefree days. I Know It Breaks Your Heart, moving to the city in a broken-down car. 4 years have passed with no calls, and now I find myself looking great in a hotel bar, feeling the same overwhelming emotions. So, the invitation is clear to get closer in the back seat of a rover that is clearly beyond reach. The tattoo on the shoulder tells a story, and the sheets are pulled right off the corner of the mattress that was taken from a roommate back in Boulder. Time feels like it stands still, and the years seem to fade away. The invitation remains, a call to get closer in the back seat of a rover that is clearly beyond reach. The tattoo on the shoulder tells a story, and the sheets are pulled right off the corner of the mattress that was taken from a roommate back in Boulder. Time feels like it stands still, and the years seem to fade away. The owner of this account faced an accident and is currently in the hospital, so there won't be any more uploads until recovery. Thankfully, the owner has fully recovered but still needs physiotherapy to walk properly. They will gradually start uploading again and are grateful for the support received. Updates will come in the next few days. As for personal reflections, There are no nicknames except for the ones that were used in a teasing manner. The favorite color is a vibrant blue, and the favorite place is a small hill nearby, surrounded by nature, perfect for relaxation or picnics. A love for dogs, especially German shepherds, stands out, and there's a fondness for music that resonates deeply. The thoughts swirl around, contemplating the meaning of commitment and sacrifice. There are many people one would protect, but the reality of such promises can be complex. The questions linger, as they often do, about who one would truly live or die for, and the weight of those choices feels heavy. The journey of self-reflection continues, taking time to navigate through the complexities of emotions and thoughts. The crowd erupted in cheers after the song, with heroes discussing their experiences and failures, emphasizing the importance of rising again to help and protect more people. Izuku smiled as he watched the audience cheer for him and announced a brief break before the next song. As he stepped off the stage, Izuku called his father. Endeavor answered, curious about the call. Izuku expressed his longing to perform a song that he, Endeavor, Dabi, and Natsuo had practiced together for fun. Endeavor agreed, thinking it might be enjoyable, and mentioned calling the others. Izuku assigned the instruments, Endeavor on drums, Natsuo on keyboard, himself on electric guitar, and Dabi on acoustic. After a few minutes, Izuku instructed the staff to set up the instruments discreetly. The male family members discussed the song among themselves. Soon, a spotlight illuminated Izuku in his hero costume as he introduced the performance. The light shifted to Natsuo, and the crowd cheered as Izuku announced him on keyboard. Next, the spotlight fell on Dabi, followed by Endeavor, who was introduced on drums. Finally, Izuku declared himself on electric guitar, and together they formed the Ice Jet Flames. The crowd roared with excitement, while Rei, Fuyumi, and Shoko watched in astonishment. Fuyumi asked her mother if she was aware of this talent, to which Rei replied that she had no idea any of them could play instruments besides Izuku. The atmosphere grew electric as Endeavor began counting down with his drumsticks, and Izuku started singing. The lyrics spoke of legends and memories, of mistakes that could define history. The crowd was captivated, cheering loudly as the performance unfolded. The Todoroki family watched in amazement, while heroes and friends of Endeavor and Dabi exchanged surprised glances, wondering why they had never mentioned their musical talents before. After the song, Izuku hugged each of his bandmates, expressing his gratitude for the fun they had. Endeavor chuckled, noting how enjoyable it had been, while Dabi joked about Natsuo's performance. Natsuo defended himself, insisting he wasn't a failure, and laughter filled the air as the moment was captured on the big screen. Live reporters commented on the closeness of the family. As the lights dimmed for a 5-minute break before the final song, both Class 1A and 1B buzzed with excitement about the band. Bakugo was even planning a date with Uraraka, discussing potential locations. When the lights came back on, Izuku appeared in a sleek black suit, drawing the attention of many young fans. He walked to the center of the stage and announced that he would perform a song he had written with someone special, inviting Kyokajiru to join him. Despite her initial hesitation, the crowd cheered her name, and she reluctantly made her way to the stage. As she pinched Izuku's side for involving her, he comically reacted, prompting laughter from the audience. Izuku encouraged her to showcase her appealing singing. With a nod, 𝐒𝐻𝐿 prepared as the music began, ready to captivate the crowd with their performance. The crowd cheered louder than ever as 𝗓𝐻𝐿 hid her face in Izuku's chest, feeling embarrassed. Izuku gently lifted her chin with his hand, leaning down to share a light kiss with her. The crowd erupted in cheers, with a few feeling a twinge of jealousy, particularly Mina, who wished she could do the same. After the final concert, the crowd began to disperse, heading home. Izuku waited at the entrance of the stadium as Shoko and Fuyumi arrived. Fuyumi greeted him with a warm hug, expressing her pride in his performance at the sports festival and concert. Shoko nodded, a hint of frustration on her face as she mentioned how upset she was that he had kept his singing talent a secret from them. Izuku chuckled nervously, explaining that it had been a surprise. Fuyumi suggested that their performances would help them secure a good number of internships, and both Izuku and Shoko agreed. A large 8-seater car pulled up, and Rei jumped out, enveloping Izuku, Shoko, and Fuyumi in a big hug. She beamed with pride, praising their achievements at the festival. The family smiled as they piled into the car and headed to a nearby restaurant to celebrate, choosing Burger Queen. As they drove, they discussed the festival and concert, with 𝗬𝗧 at the wheel. Upon arriving at Burger Queen, they settled at an 8-seater table. Izuku asked his family what they wanted to eat and went to the counter to place their order. The person behind the counter recognized him but maintained a professional demeanor, asking what he would like to order. Izuku smiled as he placed his order and paid, receiving a note to return in 20 minutes for the food. Returning to the table, Izuku informed everyone that the food would be ready shortly. Rei expressed her annoyance at being kept in the dark about their musical talents, playfully demanding that they perform 3 songs for her later that night. The others chuckled nervously, and Izuku silently hoped his voice would hold up. When the food arrived, they enjoyed their meal while sharing stories about their experiences at the festival. Afterward, they returned home, and as promised, Izuku and the others performed 3 songs before everyone went to sleep, as there were no dorms that night since their parents had picked them up. The next morning, Izuku woke up and checked the time, realizing it was 7 a.m. and school started at 8:30 a.m. He quickly completed his morning routine, took a shower, and dressed in his school uniform before heading downstairs for breakfast. He found Shoko and Fuyumi already dressed and eating. After breakfast, 𝗬𝗧 dropped them off at school 30 minutes early. Izuku, Shoko, and Fuyumi settled into their seats, waiting for their classmates to arrive. As everyone gathered, Izuku's girlfriend greeted him with a kiss on the cheek, and they began discussing their newfound popularity and how everyone was recognizing them on their way to school. The classroom fell silent when Aizawa entered, announcing that they had an important lesson that day. The students tensed as he revealed they would be choosing their hero names. Excitement filled the room, except for a few who muttered amongst themselves. Aizawa continued, explaining that another teacher would be overseeing this process and that they needed to take it seriously. Just then, the door opened, and Midnight entered, adding that there would be consequences for those who didn't. The students buzzed with excitement at her arrival, and Mineta openly admired her. Midnight approached the podium as Aizawa left the classroom and began explaining the significance of a hero name, instructing everyone to start writing theirs and present them to the class. As the students contemplated their names, Winter, a voice in Izuku's mind, suggested he go with Plasma Hero, Kitsune. Curious, Izuku asked why plasma, to which Winter explained that it was a mix of fire and lightning. Izuku nodded, watching as others presented their names. Aoi Yuga chose Can't Stop Twinkling, Uraraka went with Uravity, 𝗬𝗪 picked Froppy, Mina chose Pinky, Siro went with Cellophane, Denka picked Charge Bolt, Gyro selected Earphone Jack, Momo chose Creati, Fuyumi went with Hot Ice Angel, Bakuga declared Dynamite, Shojino picked Tentacle, Tokoyami chose Tsukuyami, Kirishima went with Red Riot, Mineta picked Grape Rush, Ida chose Miss Jet, Hagakure went with Invisible Girl, Sato picked Sugar Girl, Ojiro chose Tail Woman, and Shoko proudly presented Dual Empress. Izuku clapped for Shoko's name before stepping up to present his own. Midnight remarked on his choice, Plasma Hero, Kitsune, noting how well it suited him with his fox-like features. She gave him a small peck on the cheek, causing Izuku to blush, while the rest of the class watched in awe. Aizawa returned, commanding everyone's attention as he announced the number of internships each student had secured. He pressed a button, and the numbers appeared on the screen, revealing a spread of offers. Izuku Midoriya, 4530 Shoko Todoroki, 3850 Momo Yaoyorozu, 3568 Fuyumi Todoroki, 3558 Katsuki Bakugo, 2900 Ijiro Kirishima, 2278 Mina Ishido, 1589 Ochako Uraraka, 1289 Tenya Ida, 987 Tsu, 678 Hana Siro, 540 Kyuka Gyro, 478 Denka Kaminari, 389 Fumi Tokoyami, 256 Aoi Yuga, 128 Shojino, 78. Everyone looked in awe at the top 8 as Aizawa reassured the 5 students who hadn't received offers that they shouldn't worry. The school would offer 20 choices for internships, and everyone cheered while Izuku sighed, knowing that choosing his internship would be a challenge. Aizawa provided everyone with their hero application statistics, informing them that they had until lunch, just 2 hours, to select their hero study. The top 8 students had their applications arranged in hero ranking order, which made it easier for Izuku to decide. After Aizawa left, the students began discussing their options. Izuku sifted through his applications and noticed a name that piqued his interest. He thought that if he chose this hero, he could work on his speed and stealth. He had enough power, but stealth was an important factor as well. With determination, Izuku took the application and headed toward the staff room. Upon entering the staff room, Izuku approached Aizawa and stated his choice. Aizawa glanced over the application and remarked that it was an interesting selection. He assured Izuku that he would inform the hero. A smile spread across Izuku's face as he returned to the classroom. In the third-person perspective, everyone went to have lunch after submitting their applications for the internship, which became the main topic of discussion for classes 1A and 1B. Izuku, Kendo, Yui, Ibara, Shoko, and Reiko Yanagi sat at a table, enjoying their meals. Kendo inquired about their internship partners. Shoko, slurping her noodles, mentioned that she would be going with her dad to gain better control over her fire abilities. Yui looked at Kendo and shared that she would be training with edge shot to enhance her weapon skills and speed. Izuku expressed surprise at Yui's choice, revealing that he would also be training with edge shot to work on his stealth. The girls cast jealous glances at Yui, who smiled triumphantly, knowing she would spend a week with Izuku. Ibara sighed and mentioned her plan to train with Kamui Woods to improve her vine skills. Reiko added that she would be working with the psychic hero Hellstorm, as their quirks were similar and could help her improve. Kendo nodded in agreement and said she would be training with 𝗬𝗵𝗲 to learn close combat and how to handle the media. Everyone acknowledged Kendo's choice, recognizing the importance of managing publicity. As lunch came to an end, Izuku stood up and noted that there were only 3 minutes left. The girls agreed, and they all headed to dispose of their plates before returning to class. The next morning, Izuku finished packing for the week and headed downstairs with his backpack and hero costume suitcase for breakfast. Upon entering the kitchen, he greeted his mother, Rei, who smiled back and informed him that everyone would arrive a bit later since his sisters were with their dad and didn't need to go to the train station. After sitting down, Rei served him toast with butter and bacon. After breakfast, Izuku hugged his mother goodbye and made his way to the train station. Upon arriving at the station, Izuku checked the group chat to find out which platform his class was gathering at, except for Shoko and Fuyumi. He approached the platform, greeting his classmates and teacher while waving to Class 1B, who were a little distance away. Aizawa addressed the group, noting that everyone was present except for Shoko and Fuyumi, who were coming directly from home. He reminded the students to behave during the internships and to obey their trainers, warning them of potential consequences if they did not. Class 1A nodded in understanding and Aizawa offered a small smile, wishing them safety and hoping they would learn something valuable during their internships. The class cheered as Aizawa dismissed them to their respective platforms to catch the train to their cities. Izuku grouped up with Yui and Mina, as the three were heading to the same city. Mina excitedly shared her expectations for the internship while Yui listened and contributed her own hopes. Izuku quietly absorbed their conversation, contemplating what he could learn as well. When the train reached their station, the trio disembarked and made their way to the exit. Mina noted that their internships were on opposite sides of the city, indicating it was time to part ways. Izuku turned to Mina, wishing her good luck and hoping everything would go well. Yui added that they should hope to run into each other during patrols if their internships allowed it. Mina nodded and began walking in the opposite direction, while Izuku and Yui watched her for a moment before heading to their internship location. After a 20-minute walk, the duo arrived at Edge Shot's agency. They entered the tall building and approached the receptionist, who seemed to recognize Yui but eyed Izuku suspiciously due to his hoodie and mask, which he wore to avoid fans after gaining popularity from the sports festival. Izuku removed his mask and explained that he was in disguise to avoid public attention. The receptionist acknowledged this and informed them that Edge Shot would be waiting for them in the gym on the 19th floor. The duo nodded and took the lift to the designated floor. Upon exiting the lift, they entered a massive gym. As they explored, 2 cardboard kunai were suddenly thrown at them. Izuku narrowly dodged, but Yui was hit, yelping slightly and rubbing the spot where she was struck. Izuku picked up the kunai that hit Yui and noted that they were made of cardboard, suggesting that Ms. 𝗕𝗏𝗏 was testing their awareness. Applause echoed as 𝗕𝗏𝗏 appeared before them, commending Izuku for his good awareness but noting that he needed to improve, while also suggesting that Yui needed to enhance her awareness as well. Yui asked 𝗕𝗏𝗏 about the importance of awareness, to which 𝗕𝗏𝗏 replied that it was crucial for heroes to be aware of their surroundings to avoid sneak attacks and to react quickly in dangerous situations. 𝗕𝗏𝗏 then inquired about what the two were interested in learning during their time at the agency. Yui expressed her longing to work on her speed, awareness, and weapon-wielding skills. Izuku expressed his longing to learn about awareness, stealth, and adapting to high-speed movements. 𝗕𝗏𝗏 acknowledged their choice, stating that she was well-suited to help them improve. She planned to have Yui perform leg exercises with weights while simultaneously training them in weaponry, starting with building their awareness. Izuku inquired about creating a timetable, to which 𝗕𝗏𝗏 replied that they would patrol today to observe how a hero operates, and afterward, they would develop a schedule for the next 12 days, culminating in a final patrol to assess their progress. Curious about their hero names, 𝗕𝗏𝗏 asked them to share. Yui introduced herself as Rule, while Izuku declared himself the plasma hero, Kitsune. 𝗕𝗏𝗏 complimented their names and instructed them to change into their costumes for a 3-hour patrol before lunch. The two quickly headed to their changing rooms and emerged shortly after, ready for the mission. During the patrol, they encountered minor incidents like chain snatching, robbery, and harassment, all of which 𝗕𝗏𝗏 handled swiftly and efficiently. Izuku and Yui watched in awe, realizing the importance of being hyper-aware of their surroundings as they didn't have the opportunity to intervene in those situations. As the patrol concluded, 𝗕𝗏𝗏 explained that most patrols involve minor cases when they suddenly heard a screeching sound. They turned to see a car speeding toward an elderly woman. 𝗕𝗏𝗏 and Izuku sprang into action. 𝗕𝗏𝗏 moved the lady out of harm's way while Izuku activated his lightning mode, enhancing his speed. He positioned himself in front of the car, using his tails to absorb the impact. The vehicle collided with his tails, pushing him back a few meters but effectively stopping it. Yui quickly enlarged a medical kit from her bag and rushed to check on the elderly woman, ensuring she was unharmed after 𝗕𝗏𝗏's swift actions. Meanwhile, Izuku enlarged his tails to capture the driver, who attempted to flee, restraining him so he couldn't use his hands or legs. 𝗕𝗏𝗏 approached and placed quirk-canceling HNDCFFS on the driver just as police cars arrived. A policeman explained that the driver had committed a hit-and-run, injuring several civilians, one of whom had tragically died. The police had been pursuing him, but he had managed to evade capture using his quirk to spread oil on the road. They thanked the heroes and interns before taking the driver away. 𝗕𝗏𝗏 turned to Izuku and Yui, praising their actions during the incident. However, she noted that Izuku's method had been somewhat risky and encouraged Yui to react more quickly, assuring them that they would improve over the next 12 days. Upon returning to the agency, 𝗕𝗏𝗏 spent an hour preparing a training timetable for Izuku and Yui. Yui Kodai's training regime included wearing leg weights of 20 pounds each, increasing by 3 pounds every 3 days. Running around the gym from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. without breaks. From 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 a.m., doing sit-ups, jumping rope with weights, lunges, and step-ups. Weapon training from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Repeating running and leg exercises from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Sparring and reviewing mistakes from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Awareness training from 7:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. Free time was granted on Sundays. Izuku Midoriya's training regime included running around the gym at full speed, focusing on sharp turns and parkour training from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. Stealth training and additional parkour practice from 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. High-speed sparring with 𝗕𝗏𝗏 from 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Repeating the morning schedule from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Basics of weapon wielding and sparring with 𝗕𝗏𝗏 without using his quirk from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. Advanced awareness training from 7:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. Free time was granted on Sundays. With determination in their eyes, Yui and Izuku looked back at 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏, ready to begin their training. 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 smiled widely, visible even from the edges of her mask, and declared that it was time for their training to commence, leaping toward them for some quirkless sparring. Yui soon joined in for light stretches, and after a few minutes, they changed into their training clothes and headed to meet their trainer. It was 5 a.m. when they entered the training hall and spotted a blur dashing around. The blur was easily recognizable as 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏, who was in her training clothes. Yui appeared surprised and wondered how 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 had become so fast. 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 explained that intense training, studying, and improving her quirk were the reasons behind her speed. 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 handed Yui some leg weights, instructing her to wear the 20 PND weights on her legs and run around the hall for an hour. If she felt tired, she could take a 2-minute breather before continuing. For Midoriya, 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 planned to have him use his speed to try and tag her in the next 2 hours, encouraging him to mimic her speed and improve his ability to cut corners instead of just running straight. As 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 took off at top speed, zigzagging around the large hall, Midoriya attempted to follow but struggled with sharp turns. He had to stop completely to make a turn, which cost him precious seconds. Frustrated, he focused on observing 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 and noticed that instead of running continuously, she used her muscle power and quirk to push off with one leg, gliding forward for several meters before repeating with the other leg. She applied the same tactic during sharp turns, using extra power to change her momentum quickly. Still in his lightning mode, Midoriya tried to replicate her technique but ended up crashing into the wall, catching the attention of 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 and Yui. They rushed over to check on him, but he managed to protect himself by curling his tails around him. Turning to 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏, he expressed that he understood her method of controlling speed and making sharp turns, but he needed more practice to manage his power safely. 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 congratulated him on figuring it out and advised him to practice at his normal speed, gradually increasing it to understand the muscle exertion required for the desired speed. She reminded him not to forget his parkour training scheduled from 6:30 to 7 a.m., as she had designed a course for him to learn how to apply his parkour moves while running. Time passed, and after finishing his parkour training at 7 a.m., Midoriya found himself with a dusty tail and a few bruises on his face. With some time until 7:30 a.m., he decided to grab breakfast, take a bath, and change into dark-themed clothes for stealth training. He returned just in time to see 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 instructing Yui to freshen up and have breakfast. 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 then turned to Midoriya, noting that he had already completed what she intended to tell him at 7 a.m., and led him to a room set up for stealth training. Upon reaching an iron door, 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 explained that the room was completely silent, blocking any outside sound. For the training, she would close her eyes and try to determine Midoriya's position by sensing his heartbeat and breath, which would be audible in the room. His goal was to minimize both so she couldn't detect him. Every time she sensed his position, she would throw a wooden ball weighing 1 PND. They entered the room and began their session. After 30 minutes of stealth training, they returned just in time for Yui's weapon training, while Midoriya prepared to tackle the parkour course again, aiming to meet the time set for him that day. He noticed that Yui had chosen a staff as her weapon, which was advantageous since she could adjust its length during combat. As the morning progressed, 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 trained Yui in the basics of staff handling until 9:30 a.m., while Midoriya took a 30-minute break after completing the parkour course. 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 then approached him, stating they would engage in bare-handed combat at a speed she would set, gradually increasing it as he adapted. With a bell thrown into the middle of the training area, 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 launched herself toward Midoriya at impressive speeds, delivering quick punches. Yui returned from her break at 10 a.m., watching as Midoriya faced the onslaught of 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏's attacks. He managed to counter more than half of them, but as he began to counterattack, 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 increased the pace again, forcing him back into a defensive stance. This marked the end of the morning training for the students, who headed to their rooms to apply bandages and take a short nap. Meanwhile, 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 waited until they were out of sight, then dropped to the floor in exhaustion, reflecting on how Yui was already skilled for her age and easily grasped everything she taught. Midoriya, on the other hand, was a formidable fighter, with an incredible ability to adapt mid-battle. 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏 felt excited, realizing that this training would also benefit her, as it had been a long time since she had engaged in serious training. 12 days later, the students had made remarkable progress. Midoriya had improved his movement significantly and was now able to tag edge shot, achieving a level of skill that put him on even ground with her in high-speed combat. For weapon training, Izuku took up 2 iron batons he already had and improved his skills in using them. He excelled in parkour and awareness, steadily enhancing his stealth abilities. Yui also became quite fast due to her improved leg strength and became a natural at wielding the staff. Her awareness improved, though not to the level of heroes or Izuku. Yui significantly increased her stamina as well. During the last 5 days of the 12-day training, the students and edge shot patrolled the area in the afternoons to gain real-time experience and apply their training in the field. Yui successfully stopped 5 robbery attempts, captured 4 chain snatchers, and prevented 2 fights on her own during this time. Izuku managed to prevent 13 major car accidents, captured 3 runaway cars, and thwarted 4 robbery attempts, offering emotional support to quirkless individuals he saved from bullying. On the final day of internships, Edge Shot decided they would spend the day in Hosu City, conducting a full day of patrol until midnight. He secretly informed Izuku that the purpose was to capture Stain, the hero killer, who had recently targeted Lady Ingenium, currently unable to act due to her injuries. The 3 of them got into Edge Shot's car for the 30-minute drive to Hosu City. Since it was early morning, there was little to no traffic, and heroes had permits to bypass traffic rules. Edge Shot drove quickly, reaching their destination in just 2 minutes. They met up with Edge Shot's team, which included MT Lady, Kamui Woods, Death Arms, and Ibra. MT Lady mentioned that she had kept her intern Mineta at her base, as he clearly needed to learn self-control. Edge Shot decided that Yui would be with MT Lady for the day while he and Izuku patrolled at a fast pace, with each of the 4 choosing a part of the city. Edge Shot and Izuku headed north, where Stain had been spotted previously, hoping to gather information about his location. They patrolled until the afternoon and discovered that Stain mainly lurked in the dark alleys near the slum areas. They also intervened in 3 thefts, a bank robbery, and a violent incident involving a businesswoman. Edge Shot then suggested a restaurant for lunch, where they took a moment to sign autographs before finally enjoying their meal in peace. After placing their order, Izuku initiated a conversation, curious about Edge Shot's hobbies. Edge Shot was taken aback by the question and asked what prompted it. Izuku nervously chuckled, explaining that aside from training, they had never discussed anything else and thought it would be a nice opportunity for a pleasant conversation. Edge Shot chuckled and shared her hobbies, which included meditating, parkour, and shopping, despite knowing the last one didn't fit her hero persona. Izuku expressed his admiration for her interests, emphasizing that enjoying activities didn't require anyone else's approval, as long as they were legal. Their conversation flowed comfortably, making them appear as good friends to other patrons. As they prepared to leave after paying the bill, Izuku asked Edge Shot for her name. She was surprised to realize she hadn't introduced herself and told him her name was Shina Kamihara. Izuku smiled, complimenting her name as they exited the restaurant and sped toward the slum area to continue their search. As evening approached, Izuku and Edge Shot completed their patrol of the area and were about to move east when Edge Shot's radio crackled to life. He answered, only to hear a voice urgently calling for help from the south of Hosu before the connection cut off. Edge Shot immediately became serious, instructing Izuku to head south at maximum controllable speed and handed him a card, signaling permission to use his quirk. Izuku nodded, activating his lightning node and vanishing in a streak of lightning. He arrived at the entrance of the southern part of Hosu City, standing atop a building in shock at the scene before him. The city was engulfed in flames. Izuku was still in shock as he observed heroes struggling against cars and debris thrown by the creatures resembling the one he had faced at USJ. Upon closer inspection, he noticed 3 𝗏𝗏s, which appeared less formidable than the one he had encountered before, but they possessed a diverse range of quirks. He rushed toward the heroes, activating his lightning mode and kicking a car that was hurtling toward a hero who was evacuating civilians. The hero expressed gratitude and continued assisting more civilians. As Izuku scanned the area, he noticed Manuel but realized Ida was not with him. He leaped in front of Manuel and asked where Ida was. Manuel replied that he didn't know, explaining that during their patrol, 𝗧𝗓 had suddenly dashed into an alleyway with a furious expression and had not heeded his words. Cursing under his breath, Izuku jumped onto a nearby roof, thanking Manuel as he began to think. He pondered the unusual behavior of 𝗧𝗓, who was typically a stickler for rules. Remembering recent news about Ingenium being attacked by Stain and now hospitalized, he speculated that 𝗧𝗓 was seeking revenge. It struck him that all of Stain's victims had been in dark alleyways, indicating that the hero killer was likely in this area. 𝗧𝗓 had separated from Manuel in the southeast part of the city, near the slums where many alleyways existed. This was the first place to search. In a random alleyway, 𝗧𝗓 had just dodged a swing from the hero killer and shouted about targeting his sister. Stain, having evaded a kick, made a light cut on 𝗧𝗓's arm and responded that it was petty for a hero to seek revenge. He declared his intent to eradicate fake heroes, asserting that only All Might represented the ideal hero. He then liked the BLD from his sword, which had come from the small cut he inflicted on 𝗧𝗓. Suddenly, 𝗧𝗓 found herself paralyzed, unable to move as if her body refused to obey her commands. Stain smirked, preparing to finish off another fake hero, thinking it would be easy to eliminate two in one day. Just as Stain was about to strike, he was unexpectedly sent crashing into the wall, creating a significant dent. He opened his eyes to see a teen with green hair and emerald eyes, resembling the mythical Nine Tails. Izuku had arrived at the scene and looked at 𝗧𝗓, expressing his frustration at the situation. He questioned why 𝗧𝗓 thought it was wise to confront the hero killer alone. 𝗧𝗓, snapping out of her shock at seeing her classmate, shouted that this was her fight and urged him to leave, insisting that she needed to avenge her sister, who had been harmed by the hero killer. Izuku took a step back, surprised by her intensity. He pointed out that even All Might would be intimidated by her voice and reminded her that sacrificing her future for revenge would not save innocent lives. He emphasized that many heroes had lost loved ones to villains but chose not to seek revenge through violence. Stain, recovering from the blow, thought about the unexpected appearance of these heroes and how the recent attack had caught him off guard. He coughed up BLD and acknowledged Izuku's speech, recognizing his values as those of a true hero. However, he demanded that they move aside so he could eliminate the corrupting influences on hero society. Izuku, unfazed, told Stain to wait as he was having a serious conversation with his classmate. 𝗧𝗓 warned Izuku to be cautious, mentioning that the hero killer had paralyzed her after liking his sword, implying he had tasted her BLD. Izuku felt disgusted, calling Stain out for his actions and suggesting he should be arrested for his behavior. Stain, irritated by being ignored and insulted, struggled to maintain his composure as the confrontation escalated. The last one was unforgivable. Stain yelled with an annoyed expression, insisting that he was not a criminal, explaining that he had merely liked the BLD from his sword to paralyze his opponent. Izuku, maintaining a calm exterior, cheered internally, realizing that he had discovered Stain's quirk. He deduced that the duration of paralysis would depend on the BLD type, as each type had its own characteristics. Leaning beside 𝗧𝗓, Izuku issued a firm order, stating that she would soon feel the effects wear off. He instructed her to take the injured hero to the nearest hospital, warning her that failure to comply would result in a report to the principal, leading to expulsion and disappointment from her family. 𝗧𝗓 appeared ready to argue but reconsidered, recognizing the weight of Izuku's warning. Reluctantly, she nodded in agreement. Izuku then focused ahead, spotting Stain charging at him with incredible speed. In a flash, Izuku vanished from Stain's line of sight, causing Stain to leap aside just in time to avoid a powerful kick that cracked the pavement. Izuku expressed surprise, acknowledging Stain's impressive training, noting that even Miss Ed's shot could only defend against such an attack but not dodge it. Stain, feeling a tingle of electricity, thought to himself that Izuku was a formidable opponent. Meanwhile, Izuku realized that his electricity, which flowed around him, compromised his surprise against fast adversaries. He decided to sacrifice strength for speed in this fight. Jumping back slightly, he declared that it was time to increase his own speed. Activating his God Speed quirk, he moved so quickly that Stain couldn't react, appearing 5 meters behind him. Stain, now sweating profusely, realized he couldn't even hold the two girls as hostages, as Izuku's speed made it impossible to maintain control. In a sudden move, Stain threw a pocket knife toward Ida. However, Izuku dashed forward, catching the knife just 2 meters from where it was thrown. He noticed Stain preparing to escape and, still using God's speed, hurled the knife, which struck the wall in front of Stain, startling him. The knife was flattened against the wall, creating a hole. This distraction allowed Izuku to close the distance, attacking Stain's pressure points with precise strikes. In an instant, Stain felt completely numb. Izuku declared that the hero killer was now captured, cuffing Stain and rendering him unconscious with a swift chop to the neck. Turning to Ida, who was still paralyzed, and the other female hero, who was regaining her mobility, Izuku expressed his hope that they were not seriously injured. The female hero reported a few cuts, including a deep one, but nothing life-threatening. Ida confirmed that she only had a small cut. Izuku instructed them to follow him so they could take Stain to the authorities and assist the other heroes. The female hero then interjected, stating that despite being saved, she had to report them for unauthorized quirk use. Izuku quickly clarified that he had permission from his internship teacher, Miss 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏, and that Ida was a hero in training as well. The female hero acknowledged that with the permission card, they were not in trouble, but Ida's unauthorized quirk usage would be reported to her internship teacher and the school principal. Ida lowered her head, accepting the consequences. The three of them exited the alleyway, with Stain slumped over Izuku's shoulder, and encountered Endeavor. He was breathing heavily after battling 2 𝗏𝗏s that had fire resistance, instructing Gran Torino to send a team of heroes to locate the last flying one. Shoko, filled with admiration, exclaimed how cool her father's last move was and expressed a longing to learn it. Endeavor laughed, promising to teach her when her flames grew stronger. As he turned his gaze, he spotted Izuku with the captured hero killer. They exchanged a silent moment of understanding, and when Endeavor asked for permission, Izuku presented the card given to him by Miss 𝗔𝗂𝗏. Endeavor laughed and remarked that Izuku had successfully captured the hero killer with permission, ensuring that his credit would not be taken away. Izuku joined in the laughter as he handed the hero killer over to the police, who acknowledged him with a small salute before departing. Shoko congratulated Izuku with a hug, praising him for achieving such a feat in his first year. As Izuku rubbed the back of his head, he noticed a large figure swooping down at high speed. He quickly helped Shoko and jumped aside as the 𝗏𝗏 with wings crash-landed. Once he set Shoko down, Izuku dashed toward the 𝗏𝗏, gripping its throat and unleashing a surge of lightning from his hands. The 𝗏𝗏 disintegrated into a small pile of ashes without resistance. Mineta was in his room, laughing to himself with a mischievous grin, excited to initiate his 𝗬𝗏𝗏 plan to see the girls in their swimsuits. He tore up his plan and burned the evidence before heading to the top floor to execute the first part of his scheme. In Izuku's room, he was busy with 𝗓𝗏𝗏, while the other girls were waiting for their chance to join him. 𝗓𝗏𝗏 paused for a breath and expressed her hope for forgiveness for her actions, admitting she couldn't help herself. She moved onto Izuku's lap, leaning in for another kiss. Just as Izuku was about to make a move, the doorbell rang, interrupting the moment. The girls halted, and Momo, separating from Jirou, went to answer the door. Upon seeing Mineta, she asked what he wanted. Mineta, sensing Momo's bad mood, nervously requested to speak with Midoriya. Momo narrowed her gaze but relayed the message to Izuku. Groaning at the interruption, Izuku stepped outside and closed the door behind him. Once the door was shut, the girls gathered around 𝗓𝗏𝗏. Kendo teased her boldness, while Yui expressed a longing to be more assertive, surprised by 𝗓𝗏𝗏's aggression. The other girls agreed, and 𝗓𝗓𝗏 declared her intention to charm Izuku with her body. As 𝗓𝗓𝗏 spoke, Jirou felt a pang of insecurity about her own development, and Shoko shared her feelings of inadequacy as well. Dramatically, Shoko crawled over to Kyoka, pretending to cry about being bullied by the other girls. Kyoka joined in the act, lamenting that Izuku would prefer real women. The two felt a sudden chill as the other girls glared at them, prompting Momo to comment on Kyoka's boldness. Fuyumi reminded Shoko of her previous punishment, causing her to shiver at the memory. The girls closed in on the two, who were shaking with nervousness. Suddenly, a cloud of comical dust erupted, and when it cleared, Shoko and Jirou were found tied up in blankets and knocked out. Back to Izuku, he was in a bad mood from the interruption and told Mineta to have a good reason for disturbing him. Mineta, trembling under Izuku's intense gaze, suggested asking Mr. Aizawa for permission to use the pool for training. Izuku paused, considering the idea, and then acknowledged it as a good plan, surprising Mineta with his approval. Mineta smiled, hiding his ulterior motives, as Izuku headed to Aizawa's office to request permission. Upon arriving at the teacher's lounge, Izuku peeked in and asked if Mr. Aizawa was present. Miss Midnight welcomed him and indicated that Aizawa was on the sofa. Izuku entered and saw Aizawa rise from the couch, still in his baggy attire, and inquire if Izuku needed anything. Izuku explained that he wanted to know if their class could use the pool for training and relaxation. Aizawa considered the request and eventually agreed, but reminded Izuku to inform Mineta about his detention for the stunt he pulled at the stadium. 5 hours of detention while the class enjoyed the pool for 4 hours after lunch. Grateful, Izuku thanked Aizawa and left to inform the class. Back at the dorms, Izuku pressed the speaker button and called for everyone to gather in the main hall for an announcement. Within moments, everyone assembled, with Ibara, Yui, and Kendo checking on their classmates. Fuyumi asked about the announcement, and Izuku shared the good news about the pool access after lunch. The room erupted in cheers, but Mineta's expression turned to dismay when Izuku added that Aizawa had assigned him detention during that time. Mineta's world crumbled as he protested, claiming he hadn't done anything to deserve it. Izuku reminded him that it was a consequence of his earlier actions. Mineta was seen with his face pressed against the window, watching the pool but unable to clearly see his female classmates. He muttered to himself, hoping for a moment of courage to approach them. Meanwhile, the rest of the class was engaged in a game of beach volleyball. Momo suggested they play a game where the one who dropped the ball would have to complete a dare. She tossed the ball into the air and called out Izuku's name. Izuku leaped high and struck the ball toward Uraraka, who struggled to catch it and ultimately dropped it. Izuku dared her to ask her crush out in private, a challenge she accepted with a mix of excitement and nervousness. As the game continued, various dares were issued. Shojino was dared to sit on Izuku's lap for 5 minutes, which left her blushing the entire time. Izuku's own dare was to carry Jirou and run around the school, which he did at a speed that left her dizzy. Jirou's next dare was to kiss a girl of her choice, and she chose Shoko, leading to a moment that made both of them blush. After the game, Bakugo returned with drinks and snacks, and the class gathered to discuss their internships while enjoying their refreshments. Uraraka pulled Bakugo aside for a moment, and when they returned, they were smiling and holding hands. The class cheered for the new couple, and Uraraka expressed her gratitude to Izuku for facilitating the moment, while Bakugo gave a discreet thumbs up to Izuku. As the day came to an end, Aizawa announced that their time was up. The class changed back into their regular clothes and headed to their dorms. Feeling tired, Izuku decided to order pizza for everyone. His classmates sent him money online for their orders. At that moment, Mineta returned, looking dejected and muttering to himself about his perceived failures. It had been an eventful day for the class, filled with laughter and new connections. Izuku harnessed his quirk to create a massive surge of blue flames, ensuring that no one felt the heat as the flames danced gracefully through the air, perfectly synchronized with the rhythm of the song. He reveled in the thrill of pushing his limits, feeling the rush of adrenaline coursing through his veins. The excitement was palpable, and he loved the exhilaration that came with the chaos around him. Jirou joined him, matching his energy as they embraced the wildness of the moment. They were unstoppable legends in their own right, and their presence commanded attention. As the flames rose higher, they felt an undeniable connection to the power they wielded, enjoying the thrill of playing with fire, both literally and metaphorically. The atmosphere was electric, and they were ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their passion and determination.